Lazokamati Mateo. I call this meeting on October 20th, 2025 for City Council at 7 p.m. I will start with our land acknowledgement. City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lishan. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining an ongoing relationship with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. City Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Hansa Romero.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Mickey.
Here.
Vice Mayor McQuaid.
Here.
And Mayor Lopez.
Present. Thank you, City Clerk. We will now move on to ceremonial matters. We'll start off with proclamation for United Against Hate Week, which I believe will be received by Justin. You're more than welcome to step up to the podium where Councilmember Jordan will be as well.
Proclamation in recognition of United Against Hate Week, October 19th to 25th, 2025. Whereas since January 2017, there has been an alarming increase in ideologies using hatred as a means of intimidation. And whereas attacks on Black, Indigenous people, immigrants, members of the Asian Pacific Islander community, Muslims, people of color, women, Jewish people, the LGBTQIA community, and our most vulnerable are now commonplace, resulting in an uptick in hate crimes and the open promotion of xenophobic ideas. And whereas places of worship, including synagogues, churches, mosques, festivals, shopping malls, and nightclubs have become targets of white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and others espousing hatred. And whereas in 2018, responding to these events and to clearly state our shared values, Berkeley developed the Berkeley Stands United Against Hate campaign, which was adopted by Albany as well as many other cities in the Bay Area and served as a uniting and hopeful beacon during a challenging time, declaring our commitment to inclusivity. And whereas, to further counter the divide currently facing our nation, cities across the Bay Area and the nation are organizing the 8th United Against Hate Week that will take place October 19th to 25th, 2025. And whereas events will focus on breaking through positionality, communicating in conflict, and working together to achieve common goals, promoting education, compassion, and cooperation, which are key to embracing differences between people. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council declares this week as United Against Hate Week in Albany, and will support and encourage appropriate educational and community events. Signed, Mayor Robin Lopez.
Honorable members of the council, Mayor Lopez, staff, and members of the public, just want to thank the leadership we have here in Albany again as an Albany resident, and also as the executive director of Not in Our Town, one of the founding partners of United Against Hate Week, for really embracing this movement, for really living these values, for supporting us not only through this proclamation, but through all the work that you do in announcing that Albany is a place that welcomes all, and that stands united against hate. Again, as we launch into this week, let it be a reminder that this week does not end at the end of the week alone. That standing united against hate is really a commitment to values, a commitment to action, and a call to action. So again, thank you, honorable members of the council, Mayor Lopez, and everybody else for this proclamation.
Thank you very much. Do we have any comments from members of council? That's Vice Mayor McQuaid.
Thank you. I'll just comment that Albany was one of the initial cities back in 2018 that was part of founding United Against Hate Week. And if we could get a picture of us. Justin, do you want to come up and be in our photo? That's right.
And before we move on to the next proclamation, I just want to make a quick statement regarding Albany's Stand United Against Hate and that messaging. That I do thoroughly appreciate that we have a community that is proactive about that action when it comes to standing up against any form of hate, derogatory language, however that may take place. I just want to acknowledge that, unfortunately, none of us are insulated from that. We see it in all shapes, sizes, religion, ethnicities, and so forth. It can be frustrating at times. It can be hurtful at times. And when I say we're not insulated, I'm definitely referring to myself. As interesting as timing would have it, I had an individual in this community who sent me an email. Ironically, maybe coincidentally, I'm not sure. When you're the first ever Latino mayor in this city, and you have someone sending you emails saying to call ICE and to call Trump, those are things that we do not stand for. We stand united against hate. We stand united against any form of otherness. We stand united against any form of derogatory language towards folks. And so make that statement, I give that anecdotal experience that I've had just to remind folks that even being up here at the dais, we're not insulated from that. It happens. It doesn't mean that that gives it a pass, but it does mean that I'm able to show up, still be here, because I have solid colleagues and I have constituents that I can always rely on to be there for me, to be there because I'm going to be there for you. My colleagues are going to be there for you. And so I do want to express and just further emphasize the comment that was made by Justin, that I hope we all see that this is more than just a week. This is something that we should embody as a consciousness when we say we stand united against hate. And I do thoroughly appreciate our Vice Mayor, Peggy McQuaid, for making sure this stays on the agenda and that it always remains relevant in our consciousness. With that said, I will close this proclamation out, and I will now move on to proclamation for World Polio Day, which will be read by Vice Mayor McQuaid and to be received by a couple of our Rotarians in attendance.
Would you like to join me up here? City of Albany proclamation in recognition of World Polio Day, October 24th, 2025. Whereas Rotary is a global network of 1.2 million neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who unite to take action to create lasting change in communities across the globe. And whereas Rotary in 1985 launched Polio Plus, and in 1988 helped establish the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, which today includes the World Health Organization, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to immunize the children of the world against polio. And whereas World Polio Day was established by Rotary International to commemorate the birth of Jonas Salk, the medical researcher who led the first team to develop a vaccine against polio, and serves as a moment to honor progress made, recognition of the dedication of health workers and volunteers, and to renew our collective resolve to finish the job. And whereas the virus is spread person to person, typically through contaminated water, and most commonly affects children under 5, it can attack the nervous system, sometimes leading to paralysis. And whereas polio doesn't have any cure, making prevention through vaccines absolutely critical. And whereas polio cases have dropped by 99.9% since 1988, and the world stands on the threshold of eradicating the disease, and whereas Pakistan and Afghanistan are the only 2 countries that continue to report cases of wild polio virus, and whereas detection of the polio virus in New York and in sewage in London in recent years has increased the awareness of the disease's continuing threat, and whereas to date, Rotary has contributed more than $2.9 billion and countless volunteer hours protecting nearly 3 billion children in 122 countries, And whereas Rotary is working to raise an additional $50 million per year, which would be leveraged for maximum impact by an additional $100 million annually from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And whereas these efforts are providing much needed operational support, medical staff, laboratory equipment, and educational materials for health workers and parents. And whereas the most effective and trusted vaccine distributors are women from the local community, and their service in this dangerous job cannot be overlooked. And whereas, in addition, Rotary has played a major role in decisions by donor governments to contribute more than $11 billion to the effort. And whereas continued political and financial commitment is essential to overcome the final hurdles, strengthening health systems, and ensure that no child anywhere suffers from polio ever again. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Albany City Council does hereby proclaim October 24th, 2025 as World Polio Day in the City of Albany, and encourages all citizens to support and join the efforts of Rotary International, the Albany Rotary Club, and all members of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative in their ongoing fight to achieve a polio-free world. Signed, Robin Lopez, Mayor. Congratulations. Thank you. You got that?
Thank you.
And if you'd like to say a few words.
Okay, there you go. Thank you to Vice Mayor McQuaid and to all of you honorable members of the council, to the city manager and all of you for recognizing World Polio Day, which is October 24th, and for recognizing Rotary's work with partners around the world to eradicate polio for more than 35 years. We are, as Vice Mayor McQuaid said, a founding partner of the Global Polio Eradication Network, which has reduced polio cases by 99.9% since Rotary first undertook a project to vaccinate children in the Philippines in 1979. With that, my name's Eileen, I'm president of Rotary. I want to turn it over to Jack to say a few words as well.
Good evening, council members. Jack Kenny, and I just want to let you know about the Polio Warrior program in Rotary. I am the polio warrior, one of the polio warriors in the Albany Rotary, and the purpose is to stay informed about what's happening around the world as far as what the cases of polio. When I first started this, I had the idea that it was already eradicated, and I think a lot of people in the public think that, but it's not. And there's still cases, but they're dwindling. Right after COVID, it looked like even in Pakistan and Afghanistan, we were getting down to single digits. Since then, the last few years, it's gone up. Now it's in the 10s and 20s each year. But any case is too many. So that's why it's important for us to educate our members, educate the public, and by passing this proclamation, that does the same job of helping to educate the public. And the other thing is raising money, because there is an agreement with the Gates Foundation to match 2-to-1 to Rotary's donations up to $50 million. And so we're encouraging our members to contribute, and we're holding a fundraiser for fellow Rotary clubs on World Polio Day on Friday in that vein, so that we can get more funds and resources to make that final push to get it eradicated. And we think it's within doing, but it still takes effort to do that. So thank you for passing the proclamation, because that really helps with the effort.
Thank you for being here to receive it, and thank you for the refreshing reminder that vaccines do work. We have any comments from members on council?
Actually, I had a question if the polio warrior is willing to come back to the mic. And by all means, demur if you don't know, but you mentioned you're informed and I'm not. Was USAID involved in polio vaccination, and is it still involved?
She would know more than I would.
Okay.
I know they have been in the past. Currently, it's pretty likely there's nothing happening in that regard, but it's been a major private philanthropy effort along with the United Nations. And, but USAID played a role in several countries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other comments from council. we will close out ceremonial matters, and thank you again to our two recipients for our proclamations. I will now move on to item number 5, City Manager's Report. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a bunch of recaps on a lot of events that occurred in October, so bear with me here, and also one coming up as we're not quite over October yet. Senior Center Open House is this Thursday from 10 to 3. This is an opportunity for everyone in the community really to understand the senior center, the opportunities there, and the services provided to seniors, and also other programs and events. So please join us. A reminder that November 4th is an important date for the election. All have received a vote by mail ballot. We have a drop-off right in our back area near the parking lot here. You can also send it in by USPS. And also, speaking of our senior center, they will have a vote center at the Albany Senior Center November 1st through 4th, so you can cast your vote in person there with staff from the Registrar of Voters Office. On October 11th, feels like a little ways ago now, but we had quite an event, a couple of events here in our parking lot and in the fire department. The annual pancake and open house event through our Albany Fire Department raised a significant amount of money for the Byrne Foundation to send, I believe, 3 children to a camp this year. So that's great turnout, great support from the community as always, and appreciation to our fire department for always putting in so much work to that event. As part of the event this year, and even in this room, and thank you to all the council members that were able to attend, we also had a City Hall open house, and we had a really great turnout and got to engage with a lot of families and others maybe newer to the city, or just, you know, have a chat with anybody that wanted to come up to our tables. So it was a great event. A lot of our department heads were here and got to engage and spend a few hours together. So appreciate all of our staff for being willing to come in on a Saturday and really get to know our community. And we will do it again next year. So looking forward to that being an annual opportunity. Also last week, the city staff held a emergency operations training, which was all hands training across all of our departments to refamiliarize ourselves with our role as disaster service workers. In the event of an emergency or a disaster or any of the above, we do activate our emergency operations center, and we have quite a few mandated roles assigned to us under that regard. And so refreshing on that and keeping it a priority is something that we are continuing to do in order to be ready. So I appreciate our staff for doing that event and looking forward to more along that overall program area. And we had a compost giveaway on the 18th between 8 and 10:30 while supplies lasted. We gave over 1,000 bags of compost away. So great appreciation to Public Works maintenance crew who's been really busy in October setting up events, and this was yet another one. So looking forward to doing it again, and glad we were able to distribute all of that material. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Yes, Councilmember Mickey.
City Manager, one question. So I appreciate the city's efforts again this year for buy local, and so there was the buy one, get one 50% off. Are those still for sale for members of the public, or have we sold out of our gift cards?
We actually have the staff representative here, Brennan, putting you on the spot a little, but if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so we did sell out. It actually worked out perfectly with the timing of Albany Local Week. So we sold out the Sunday after Albany Local Week. So it was, again, another successful campaign of the buy one, get one, which, again, that money will go back directly into the Albany economy, which is a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? I will just say thank you for acknowledging the joint pancake breakfast and city expo. I will say, Councilmember Jordan, I apologize if there's any baby drool on your mic. Not from me. My chief of staff was sitting there singing the ABCs. But I do want to acknowledge the work of city staff being present that day, because so many families were able to enjoy a lot that day. My chief of staff was playing with the blue foam stuff earlier in the day before he had to leave. Nap time called him. But it was a really great event, and I just can't express enough how much city staff has just been on a roll with everything. Sid smiling because he knows I always want to give him a special shout out all the time, and he knows it's teamwork that make the dream work. But just want to give my acknowledgement. I really appreciate everything that city staff's been able to do. Do we have any comments from the public regarding city manager's report? Not seeing any, I will close it out. Move on to item number 6, good of the city. This is for persons desiring to address city council on items that are not on the agenda. And please note that is our policy to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. City clerk.
Good evening. I am Dr. Stephen Alpert. The City of Albany adheres to the absolute minimum state mandate of only alerting those within 300 feet of proposed new construction by mailing postcards but 10 days before a first project hearing. Moreover, Albany does not require posting signs at the project site detailing proposed construction. My wife and I and over a dozen individuals have requested that Council consider expanding public notification beyond 300 feet as enacted by many other California municipalities. To date, the Council has refused to address this issue. Alerting only those within 300 feet limits public discourse, allowing the Planning and Zoning Commission propose, and the Council then push through new projects, no matter how inappropriate, with minimal awareness and input from the community. Such was the case for the oversized 5-story mixed residential commercial structure, modern box proposed for 1600 Solano. Only 73 properties were alerted before the initial Planning and Zoning Study session on January 26, 2022. At the last meeting, Councilman Jordan asserted that Code 66300B1C bars cities from considering architectural harmony when considering project applications. However, that does not change the absolute fact that the approved plans for 1600 Solano violate every single aspect of Albany's Planning and Zoning Mission Statement shown here. That structure is not functionally appropriate for the site, nor is it harmonious with the surrounding Craftsman-era buildings. Of note, council members Mickey, Lopez, and Hanson Romero were not serving when 1600 was approved, and then Councilman McQuaid opposed the project. The Planning and Zoning Commission had the responsibility to guide the submitted plans toward greater compatibility with the neighborhood. A review of the videos of the initial study session and a subsequent meeting on April 27 reveals that most discussion focused on whether the requested waivers and concessions permitted by density bonus law were appropriate. During the public comment session of April 27, 3 attorneys, including former Mayor Robert Cheesty, questioned the city's application of density bonus law for the ground floor medical offices and whether Solano Avenue even qualifies as a traffic corridor, as a transit corridor. State Law 330 allows for up to 5 meetings to consider a project, and the study session doesn't account. During the public comment in the January and April meetings, a total of 42 individuals clearly opposed the project. 1 was neutral, and only 2 supporting it, including the applicant. During the single session of June 1 council meeting devoted to 1600 Solano, 43 individuals voiced legitimate concerns about traffic safety. And despite several calls for continued discussion, and Vice Mayor Tiedemann noted intensive feelings, Mayor Jordan pushed for immediate approval of the project.
Thank you for your
Celeste
comment.
will continue.
Good evening. As documented, despite overwhelming opposition, questions regarding the legality of the city's application of density bonus and calls for continuance, including one from the Councilwoman McQuaid. Both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council pushed through this highly controversial project during single sessions. The video of the June 1st council meeting documents numerous individuals concerned about increased traffic congestion at the dangerous Tacoma-Ordway-Solano intersection, and the risk of injuries due to the lack of a drop-off area for children attending the applicant's ground floor orthodontist practice. Incredibly, Community Development Director Bond offered that, in his opinion, the project would not result in increased traffic congestion. There's no factual basis for that conjecture, given that no traffic study was ever conducted. This meeting videos clearly show that the Planning and Zoning Commission, Community Development staff, and the council outright ignored or downplayed the community's legitimate concerns regarding 1600 Solano. Councilman Jordan has written that he felt compelled to vote in favor of the project because he feared a lawsuit from the applicant. Perhaps a lawsuit might have happened, but we will never know because the council did not approach the applicant to consider any mitigations, given that the project was approved in a single meeting. Albany residents appear to have registered their displeasure at the city council officials who disregard their concerns. As is evident, one half of the Albany Forward duo is no longer on the council. Regarding the central issue of the presentation, there is no legal reason preventing Albany from expanding public notification for new construction. And the council has run out of excuses as to why it refuses to address this issue if they actually believe that alerting only those within 300 foot for all new construction just 10 days before the first hearing is appropriate, then defend this practice. Submit 300-foot notification as a meeting agenda item to allow for extended, in-depth public discussion. Similar to the recent concerns for the lack of public notice regarding beach volleyball court proposed for Ocean View Park, the City of Albany seems disinterested in alerting the community about new projects. Lastly, we understand that density bonus may allow for 5-story structures on Solano Avenue. However, we and many others remain opposed to the ill-conceived design of 1600 Solano, which is utterly inappropriate for that site. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. I'm Francesco Papalia, lived in town since 1987. I and another member of my group have submitted to public comment our concern about how the Housing Advisory Committee has been run in the last few months. At the September 3rd meeting, one agenda item included 3 months' worth of agendas that included a total of 15 new policies that the public was given 3 minutes to respond. That would be around 12 seconds per policy. And it was unnecessary that it was all lumped together. So unnecessary that the chair decided they were going to have 3 separate votes on the 3 buckets of items that were included in that one agenda item. It could have easily been subdivided. And the 3 people who actually showed up here to speak could have had an opportunity to speak appropriately. And why was this done? Unfortunately, there's a pattern that persists at the Housing Advisory Committee that is not open to the voices of the housing providers. I am neither a tenant nor housing provider. I have worked in real estate for a very long time, over 3 decades. And my experience and the experience of Daniel Winkler, one of the members of that group, unfortunately is routinely ignored, and in order to propose and move forward on ideas that are not really well-founded in facts and reality and practicality. And I want you to understand that at those meetings, there's maybe been 3 or 4 tenants total who have showed up and spoken. And why is that the case? And the housing providers who show up, their voices are just not even considered. I would like you to think hard about how this committee is run in the future and how it's led, because the public is not being well served. And please read carefully the letters that have been put forth during the public comment for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi there. I'm calling about waste management. Earlier this year, they got rid of the small trash bins, which really encouraged people to reduce their waste. They got rid of the small trash bins, and then they doubled our rates, literally doubled. Now they have, I guess, with some of our money for our double rates, they have new technology, and they're photographing our bins to see if they're filled incorrectly. And people walk around town, they walk their dogs, they drop random items in random bins. That's just reality. There are other people who go through bins looking for recycled items, and they transfer the contents in the bins. For that problem, what Waste Management advises us to do is they say, put out your bins at 5 in the morning, so people won't drop stuff in it at night or won't go through it. That's kind of not realistic for most of us. Also, some residents have received warnings that their bins have been misfilled, but they're not our bins. So they're getting warnings for neighbors' bins. And so I've been involved in some discussions on some of our local Facebook groups, and this is happening to residents all over our town. Everyone's saying, yeah, it happened to me, it happened to me. It was the wrong bin, it was the neighbor's bin, someone put stuff in it, all this stuff. So our rates are doubled, and our small bins are gone, and we get warned, and then we'll get fined if our bins are deemed to be incorrectly filled, even if we didn't incorrectly fill them. And so I just wanted you guys to know that this is going on, because it's going on all over town, and I know it's kind of like first world problem or whatever, but it's a pain. We're paying twice as much and not getting good service, and then we're going to get fined for things that we did not do. So I hope there's something we can do to talk with Waste Management and straighten this out, because it's affecting everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comment.
Go ahead, Lucinda. We can't hear you if you're talking.
Okay, you cannot hear me, and now?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, sorry about that. Yes, I'm Lucinda Young. I'm a longtime Albany resident and also a member of the Albany Climate Action Coalition. And I have a few comments. I first wanted to just respond to Amy's previous comment about waste management. I also just would like to complain about their discontinuation of the rates for small containers. That discontinuation just encourages people to increase their waste. I'm really work on minimizing my waste. I have a very small amount that's generated, and now I have to pay double, even though I generate a very, very small amount. However, I do strongly support their imposition of penalties, fines, and citing people for not sorting their waste properly. I think it's a massive problem, and I know a lot of people just don't pay attention to it. What I do is I just put my bins out at 7 a.m. in the morning. At least on my street, Pomona Avenue, they do not come before 7, so that's not a problem, and that way I avoid people mixing the waste. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but I think we need these fines in order to encourage compliance. But what I want to comment on is EV chargers, the public EV chargers. There's been some public comments previously about the EV chargers in Albany, which we need to advance our climate action and adaptation plan. I know the current cap that was just, the current CIP that was just passed does not include EV chargers, public EV chargers, as the previous CIP did. But I was very happy to hear our city manager indicate in a previous meeting that the city is working with businesses to install public EV chargers. I'm just interested in hearing an update from the city manager, maybe at a future meeting, about what's going on with that. I had heard that the city's working with a Toyota dealership near I-80 to install some public EV chargers. And there's been some conversation between Albany Climate Action Coalition members that we do not think that's a good site for chargers, and we'd like to have some input on that. So I'm hoping we can hear more about that in the future and have an opportunity for input. And also, I'm interested in hearing what's happening with the block electrification project. We have not heard much about that lately. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hello, good evening, council members. My name is Saya Faragtala, and I'm also a housing provider who submitted a letter in regards to the conduct of the Housing Commission. I'd like to just support Francesco before I reiterate anything that I had submitted to you. And I'd also like to offer up, I'd like to encourage you to please take a look at the September 3rd meeting. We also can provide you, as property owners, the timestamps of the specific incidents that we cite, or that I cite, in my submission to you. I think it's really important to take a look at the makeup of the Housing Commission and how things have been going, as Francesco had provided to you, because before anything comes to policy, I mean, this is something that has to be cleaned up if we're going to have fair rent stabilization or any say in assisting the city in the right direction. Again, I will reiterate over Zoom that I don't think it's from ill will. I think it's from a true lack of understanding of what compliance we already abide by. We currently are under very strict legislation that some of the suggestions being made at the Housing Commission, we would be going over things that have, laws that are already in place, or, as I had mentioned in my letter, some of the special interest. I think it's just a lack of understanding, and the Housing Commission hasn't been very supportive of the single housing member when they're supposed to be housing provider when they're supposed to be two. So I just think the imbalance is going to skew any serious policy about rent stabilization in Albany or any steps towards it. I just don't think it would be fair for policy to be presented to council without having our voices heard in what, in the items that were jammed through. And most of those 15 items were quite serious and had pretty decent amount of financial impact, which we're already bearing by 1482, by the economics that we're all living through. And I encourage you. I hope that we can send it to you and that you will take a look at the September 3rd meeting, and perhaps you will see that we might have to take a step back before any serious policy is considered. And we, as housing providers, are open to talking to you and using Mr. Winkler as our representative to assist you in taking responsible steps for both parties, tenants and housing providers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, that concludes public comment. There were a couple things that popped up, and I'll direct it to the city manager. I know there's been a lot of chatter about waste management. Curious if there has been any communication with waste management staff, or if that could be initiated.
Sure, absolutely. I've noted that, and I will be following up with our franchise compliance staff to understand where things are not being adequately performed by the representatives from Waste Management and find solutions for that.
Perfect, thank you. And then the other thing, there was a comment about EV charger updates. Anything at this moment or anything we should expect down the pipeline?
I appreciate the interest, and I absolutely want to share updates and will when we have something substantive to share. Usually in these endeavors, it's some back and forth with the business owner and the city and working for funding and the opportunity and electrification and whatnot. So we are making headway. We have a few different opportunities forthcoming. Don't really have anything substantive as of yet, but I completely understand that it is of a priority interest, and we'll make sure to relay that information in my city manager's report whenever I have something. And Lucinda is always welcome to email me directly should that communication be more productive as well.
Appreciate it, thank you. And then the last thing, it seems like there's been some commentary around hack, and I just wanted to see if city staff had any response or comments on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand the frustration, and I apologize for that. I do know that, this is an energized topic. Our housing element is pretty hefty in terms of implementation. And what I can say moving forward is that all of those items will be forthcoming to the City Council, and this is where we have the opportunity to really do work together. And that will likely be through study sessions where conversation can be more back and forth and really just learning together and finding solutions that fit Albany. So while it may feel like something was concluded, I would encourage folks to look to the City Council, and we'll make sure that that's, on your agenda and clear and noted adequately and represented for all involved, so that we can engage in those conversations going forward.
Appreciate it, thank you. And that said, that concludes the public comment portion for our meeting. We'll now move on to item number 7, consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine unless anyone from council chooses to pull an item, or anyone from the public. Does anyone from council wish to pull an item from consent calendar? Not seeing any. Do any members of the public wish to pull an item from consent?
I'll move consent.
All right.
I will second.
Perfect. City Clerk?
Councilmember Mackey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez,
Yep.
Councilmember Hanson Romero,
Yes.
and Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to item number 10, unfinished business. We'll start with 10-1, ARPA program update, city staff.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Lopez. I'm Isabelle Leduc, Assistant City Manager. The item before you tonight includes an update on ARPA programs over the last year. Could we have next slide, please? Thank you. And a request to allocate $50,000 of ARPA funding from the temporary COVID Business Assistance Program to the temporary COVID Public Assistance Program to cover costs of the rental assistance program until the end of 2026. And a request for initial feedback on programs and services of priority interest to work to retain post-pandemic without ARPA funding. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. On March 11th, 2021, the Federal American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law. The ARPA provided aid for public health and economic recovery due to COVID. And the city was allocated a little over $4.7 million. The City Council approved ARPA funding to create a temporary COVID public assistance program and a small business assistance program. And a little bit of funding was also used for cybersecurity infrastructure. It is anticipated that all ARPA funds the city received will be expended by the end of 2026 in accordance with the U.S. Department of Treasury guidance. 79.5% of the funds have been spent as of the end of September. So to continue the presentation, I will now turn it over to Assistant to the City Manager, Brennan Brown, to present information on the Business Assistance Program, and Recreation Supervisor Kate Miller to present information on the Public Assistance Program.
Good evening, Council. So I'm providing an update on the ARPA programs to assist the business community, starting with our grant programs. So there are 3 that are currently available: the Business Facade Improvement Grant, the Business Attraction Grant, and the Window and Door Repair Grant, all of which are reimbursement grants. Last year is when the city launched the Business Facade Improvement Grant. The goal of this program is to incentivize facade treatment to increase customer visits and commercial vitality, not just for the businesses receiving the grant, but for our commercial areas in general. This is a 50% matching grant, and we are offering free design assistance and consultation as part of this program. 2 commercial locations have been awarded funds. An additional 12 commercial locations have been pre-approved for the grant and are anticipated to be awarded grant funds this fiscal year. Many of the applicants have taken advantage of the complimentary design assistance. The benefits of the city retaining a facade design consultant to offer this service include consistency in design quality and an expedited approval process. The Business Attraction Grant is available to help fill vacant spaces in commercial areas and give business owners financial support to overcome startup costs. This is for new and expanding businesses. 7 businesses have been awarded funding for this grant after opening, and on August 10th, the San Francisco Chronicle food section included a cover story about how Albany has become a hit for restaurants. Many of the businesses featured in the article were awarded this grant. The Window and Door Repair Grant was established to support businesses impacted by vandalism or break-in. Originally opened in 2023, this grant was reopened in 2025. To date, 14 Albany businesses with storefront properties were able to apply for reimbursement funds on repairs. In general, the grant programs serve 2 pillars of economic development. That's business retention and business attraction, which will continue to be focuses of the Economic Development Division moving forward. In addition to these grant programs, the city is continuing to host or provide support to events in our commercial areas to bring current and new customers to Albany. Examples of this are the Holiday Makers Market, hosted by Albany Business Picnic, and Solano Avenue Association events like the Solano Stroll. We are also continuing to promote Albany's commercial areas. An example is our street banner program. The current set went up earlier this year. Next slide, please. I will now turn it over to Kate Miller, who will be providing information on public assistance.
Hi, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with an update on our ARPA implementation this last year on the community services side. Overall, ARPA funds have provided the city an opportunity to direct resources towards some critical needs facing our community, such as food, housing, and child care. Across the board, the ARPA public assistance programs that you approved, we've administered them targeted to low-income residents in the city. We've utilized the income limits set annually by HUD. Low income is considered 80% of area median income, which for a household of 3 in our region is roughly $113,000 and under. The programs we've implemented were designed to help address ongoing social, health, and economic pressures that resulted from the pandemic. But given the steady participation rates that we've seen well into this last year, it's clear that there's ongoing need in the community, and these programs have been very impactful beyond the pandemic. Next slide, please. Thank you. So over the last year, we haven't made any changes to the scope of the ARPA programs that you approved for public assistance. There are 3 programs that we're currently implementing, and these will be familiar to you. We've got the Friendship Subsidy Program, which helps low-income families with school-aged children to offset the cost of the Friendships Club after-school program, the Junior Counselor Program, and our Summer Camp Program. And we project this program will be running through the school year and through the summer of 2026. We have Albany Project Hope, which continues to assist unhoused residents in our community. And the ARPA expansion has allowed for increased outreach and navigation, housing navigation services, including in some cases transitional housing placements. And this funding will last through the end of the fiscal year. The financial assistance program is still running and offers one-time assistance to tenants struggling to pay for rent, food, and household expenses. While the financial assistance program had its highest participation rates during the first year that we implemented, we have continued to see a steady rate of new inquiries into the program. We average about 4 referrals a month to Echo Housing to complete that application process. And about 50% of those clients referred to Echo each month are approved for assistance. Of the 77 applications that we've approved so far for that program, the majority have been approved for rental assistance versus debt relief, averaging about $8,200 per household on average. In practice, some takeaways, we've found that the 2 tracks of the program, so rental assistance and debt relief, may not be necessary, that under this big umbrella of rental assistance, tenants have been able to utilize the assistance to achieve more financial stability. So whether that's paying off a credit card or a car debt, or saving for future rent, or a critical expenditure for their family, or providing just a cushion while they kind of get back on track with employment or whatever issue they might be dealing with. Another key takeaway from this program is that we've realized applicants are actually paying rent, and not that many have actually received notices of eviction. However, they're right on the margin of becoming delinquent on rent due to mounting financial hardship, and that's caused for a whole variety of reasons that we've seen. But really, the way we structured the program to identify need and eligibility has been broad enough that we've really been able to assist people before they reach the stage of eviction. So it's been very preventative and contribute to housing stability in the city. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk briefly, as ARPA programs are winding down and we're considering ways to continue to support our residents, I'd like to highlight some of our current resources that are available. We have our Albany Cares program, which provides navigation and referral services to all Albany residents, regardless of income or age. Community members can contact Albany Cares through various avenues, walk-in, email, phone, events. Staff takes the time to meet with individuals to determine their primary needs, and then assist them with information and referrals to local programs and potential resources. Staff spends time connecting with local agencies to better understand what social services are available to community members. And we work closely with the Albany Senior Center, collaboratively across city departments, particularly the police department, fire, and community development, but across the city to help folks navigate even within their own city. Albany Cares also implements the rent review program and the landlord and tenant counseling program that's provided through Echo Housing. We help administer Albany Project Hope, and we take an active role in assisting homeowners and renters to apply for the parcel tax exemptions and renter rebate program. Beyond the parcel tax exemption and renter rebate questions and helping folks with applications, the primary issues that Albany Cares assists with and that we get contacted by folks in the community includes financial assistance, homelessness, landlord and tenant issues, and affordable housing. And a whole host of other issues, but those are the primary ones. I'd like to note that Albany Cares has grown significantly since it first started. It's expanded its role in the pandemic, and the ARPA programs did have a contributing factor to that because we were bringing in more people for services, and we were able to then also provide them with Albany Cares services. In 2024, Albany Cares assisted 668 clients unduplicated on a whole range of issues, and we're on track with similar numbers this year. So that's more than double the service letter level of its first year in 2019. Albany Cares is well positioned to explore additional resources as ARPA funds wind down and foster potential collaborations that could help address community needs, such as expanding our Mercy Brown program at the Senior Center, exploring scholarships that could help with childcare assistance. Staff are also keeping a pulse on county resources and can, work to identify any upcoming opportunities of the larger scale nature, such as the recently passed Measure W, which is the half-cent sales tax in Alameda County. Next slide, please. And then I just want to briefly highlight a few additional resources that we have available for community residents. Of course, the Albany Senior Center. It provides a range of recreation opportunities and community services to our senior residents. There's, for seniors who are in need of social services, you have very low income seniors that can access groceries twice a month through the Mercy Brown program, daily lunches at a very low cost. The Senior Center also offers our Meals on Wheels program, our taxi reimbursement program, and our door-to-door shopping program through our paratransit program funded by Measure BB. And seniors can also make appointments for Medicare counseling, legal assistance counseling, and technology assistance. So that's a very strong resource in our community. And then beyond our city resources, we've got some resources available to UC Village residents through the UC Berkeley. They have their UC Bear Pantry. They have the Basic Needs Center where students can apply for 1 month rental assistance and additional support and services. They can go in kind of with a range of issues, and the Basic Needs Center will sit down with them. We also have the Alameda County Social Services Agency. They provide access to a range of state programs, CalFresh, Medi-Cal, IHSS, et cetera. There's a whole host of them that the Alameda County Social Services is a window to for our residents. We direct community members there quite regularly, and we want to ensure that they're receiving the benefits they're eligible for. And Alameda County has been very responsive to our requests for community outreach and providing us with resources for our residents. Thank you.
Okay, so my turn. Basically, part of our request, our recommendation to council is to funding allocation to the rental assistance program. During our previous presentation last year, council had expressed interest in continuing to support rental assistance as long as feasible. And based on council's direction, staff is requesting the reallocation of $50,000 from the business assistance program to the public assistance program. This would bring the rental assistance fund balance to $230,000. And we believe that based on current demand, this funding level will sustain the program through December 2026. So that's one of our requests to you tonight. Next slide, please. Also, as part of Goal 4 of the Council's strategic plan to encourage community connectivity through diversity, equity, and inclusion, Council is to consider if and how to continue the city programs currently funded by the one-time ARPA funds. So this is an opportunity to look at the transition of the programs post-pandemic and spending of the ARPA funds, which will conclude some of the one-time services and programs that were focused on those most impacted during the pandemic. And in terms of considering what services and programs may be a priority to retain, There's a few important points that should be included as part of the decision process. So in looking at the programs, we can look at the scale of service and of the service and the program. Is the City of Albany the appropriate facilitator of the service program area, particularly given our limited size and is it an essential core service? And would there be another level of government that could be responsible for providing this service? In times of limited resources, we don't want to duplicate services. Coordination is great, but duplication is probably something we want to avoid. Also, the other piece is administration. Is the service program something that is straightforward to implement without significant administrative overhead? Again, due to our limited size, staffing is limited, and we want to keep our programs manageable and efficient as well. And then funding. Is there a potential that the city's operating budget can be adjusted in certain ways to accommodate a scaled version of a service or program? And if the program requires significant financial resources, is it likely not sustainable at the local level? Next slide, please. So based on monitoring and staff analysis along with the the decision-making criteria just mentioned, staff recommends that the Albany Cares program remain at its current service level to ensure the program continues to be responsive to community needs. As Kate mentioned, Albany Cares serves a large number of residents and is highly effective at assessing the needs of Albany's most vulnerable population and connecting them with available services. Albany Cares serves as the door to basically providing information to our residents about the web of resources available. And of note, and Kate mentioned it as well, in 2024, the number of unduplicated people assisted was 668 as compared to 257 in 2019, so 2.5 times more people served since before the pandemic. So that's a huge success that we want to continue to be able to do. Also, Albany Cares would continue to coordinate with other social services providers to increase access to services for all residents. As mentioned earlier, Albany Cares would also continue to pursue new opportunities to support residents, including but not limited to collaborating with the Mercy Brown Bag Program to expand capacity of the distribution of grocery bags twice a month, expanding scholarship opportunities to Friendship Club families, or at least continuing, and exploring county-level funding such as Measure W. Okay, so Albany Cares will continue to collaborate with Echo Housing for the rental assistance program. We would like to continue that program as directed by council. Staff will assess the demand for the program and return to council as part of the fiscal year 26-27 budget process with a recommendation for additional funding and any necessary adjustments to program guidelines. And then Albany Cares will also continue to coordinate with Insight Housing for the implementation of Albany Project Hope, the city's homeless outreach engagement and housing navigation program, which has been in place since 2013. While the scope of future services will decrease without ARPA funds, the program should continue to be funded within a budget consistent with pre-pandemic support levels. And also to note, Albany Cares provides a wide range of services, as just mentioned, and an initial review of neighboring cities of similar size and comparable demographics demonstrated that Albany's program is comparable and likely more advanced. Next, okay, you're already there. Thank you. So pending council direction, staff will plan to include the anticipated costs of maintaining current service levels for Albany Cares, including rental assistance and the salary cost of a staff member in the fiscal year 26-27 budget. And staff will work to, let's see. And then and basically what we're saying is that we probably need about $350,000 annually. The next fiscal year, we anticipate needing a little less because we still have 6 months of ARPA funding for some of the programs. And as far as business support, all business grant programs will end when funds are expended, but we will continue through the city's economic development division, as Brennan mentioned, to engage with our business community, to remain responsive to potential areas of needs. And once we have those needs, we have a better idea of what those needs are post-pandemic, because now there's been some time has passed and we're finalizing our grant programs. We'll connect with the business community to see what new needs have emerged, or what is the potential for providing either similar support or different support. So we need a little bit more time, I think, to assess that piece. So that concludes our report, and we're here to answer questions.
All right, no, thank you very much for the presentation. I do have a couple questions, but I'll let folks on council colleagues, if you have any questions at this moment, go first.
I just have one question, but first, thank you so much for the work, and so enthused that much of it's going to continue. I'll note that the households that have been helped through the debt and rent assistance program, by the census data, that's approaching about a tenth of the households that are in that income category. So that's pretty remarkable in terms of what that means for the city and the nature of the city. And in terms of the number of households that have been served overall, that is approaching. I mean, there's about 5,000 households in Albany, so 668 is a huge fraction. There are some more households, but really scaling that up to really reach the households that potentially are eligible. So thank you so much. Question is the estimate of $150,000 for a year of rental assistance. If I understood correctly, the recent average has been $8,200 per household and about 2 households a month, which when I do the multiplication comes out to about $200,000 a year. So I'm just curious how the $150,000 was arrived at.
Basically, what we're anticipating is that we will continue to assess the need, but we anticipate that the need will level off, and that with some adjustments to the program to meet urgent needs, we will most likely need less than what we are currently providing.
And we have seen in the last year that we're at about $152,000 dispersed. And so we've come down a bit. And that's an average that, depending on the need, it kind of shifts month to month, but sometimes it's under that amount that people need. A little bit more, but we could certainly kind of shift the guidelines a bit too, so that we stay within that range and can really make that $150,000, meet the need throughout the year. That would be the kind of what we're.
Thank you for the explanation and for somehow finding the money in the second year of the current budget.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions from folks on council?
I just have a quick question. Have you thought about other organizations to support some of the sort of the smaller pieces, like the scholarships or the childcare? A smaller grant or contribution could free up money for something else, if we could find somebody else to pay that little piece. Is that something you're looking at?
Certainly. Yes, and APAL has been very helpful as far as providing some subsidies on our other side, our contract camps and classes. And so we've seen that model work where that an eligible household could receive $100 off, for example, of their program. And so we could sort of modify, thinking about modifying how we could still support households with childcare costs. Particularly our summer camp program is really robust, and even just having a small scholarship can really kind of make a difference for a family to be able to do the program and maybe even do a couple weeks or more. So yeah, we have been looking at sort of maybe smaller support from local groups that could, and we could again adapt the program guidelines to fit our current reality of the amount of money and sort of what current need is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for that question, Vice Mayor McQuaid. I think that kind of highlights how a collective impact model can be adapted and applied to city governance and structure. So that's really dope. I had a couple quick questions. Feel free, anyone on any side of the room who wants to take it on. I noted in the presentation it said in 2024, 668 unduplicated households were assisted. 15% were for financial assistance, so it comes out to about 100 households. Is there a quantifiable number beyond that, right at the top of your head, of impacted individuals? Because I've seen on the website for the financial assistance program how it's bracketed from household side from 1 to 6. And so I'm curious, because it could be anywhere from 100 individuals impacted to 600 individuals. And I would love to get a sense to know the level of impact our city's had in this community.
I could speak briefly, but then maybe depending on your question, we could provide a little bit more deeper dive on some of the information. Certainly for Albany Cares, when we sort of note issues that people have come to us with, it really ranges. Financial assistance fairly broad, so it could be I need help with paying rent. My utility bill is too high. I'm behind on my car payment. My credit card is starting to get, unwieldy. So really a range. It's just expensive to live here and I don't know what to do. We get that inquiry, and so then it's sort of trying to guide people towards appropriate resources. In some cases, it's a really clear line to the financial assistance program. They're eligible. It looks like it's going to be helpful to them. Sometimes it's more, you should get signed up for CalFresh. You should talk to the county. You're eligible for CalWorks even as a single parent, et cetera. So we try to kind of just do that deeper dive, getting folks signed up for PG&E Care program where you can get 20% off. And in many of those cases, we have kind of multiple touches with the household to sort of work through, step 1, and then, okay, what about step 2 or 3? There's a great financial counseling nonprofit called Spark Point, and that runs out of Richmond, and sponsored by United Way, that often will, once we kind of get people through those first sort of urgent steps, that then they can work with a financial counselor over time to really try to figure out like a long-term plan. So there's a bit of, to answer your question in a long-winded way, there's sort of these various levels of support, but we sort of count them all as Albany Cares clients and people that we've tried to assist with financial financial concerns.
No, totally understand. And again, just asking the question for the sake of really highlighting how impactful these programs are, the number of people that within our community that are assisted, it's valuable. My second question, because I also noted that it highlighted collaborations with UC Berkeley. Me being in the UC Village, for full transparency, it's a roller coaster of existence. I'm curious to what extent any of these resources are available to UC Village residents, because I'm also aware that UC Berkeley has their own separate program, but then there's gray area. There are 2 individuals I know specifically who are no longer students, and they can't enroll because their debt levels are too high with the dollar value on their rent that they just simply cannot take on. And I'm very familiar with the process, unfortunately, that if you're not a student, then you can't pull out a student loan, and there's just nowhere for them to go. when a resident who happened to be one of my neighbors approached me about this, and I had said, we actually have something coming up on our council agenda soon, and I can inquire. But I think for the sake of this being a public meeting and for the benefit of everyone listening, just curious to what extent are these resources available to folks in the village? Because though I know a haphazard argument is sometimes made that they don't pay property taxes, that's no fault of their own for being residents, and people who want to live in this community take that up with their landlord, not the residents.
That's a great question. We have made all the programs available to UC Village residents. So as far as the ARPA program, so when the community grocery program was running, a lot of the UC Village, we had a lot of families that would come monthly and pick up their grocery card. The financial assistance program is available to UC Village residents with slightly different, I guess I would say the application process is a tad more thorough. They need to sort of share about their financial assistance package, distinguish between your debt, because kind of assume they all have student debt, but more, what's really going on to financially impact them, where they have not been able to pay tuition. I was just looking at the numbers. So out of all the, referrals we've made to Echo Housing, we've had 25 UC Village tenants that, we kind of did that initial intake process and moved them on to Echo Housing to complete the application, and 10 UC Village households were approved. There's, as of October 1st, there was 2 pending. And then there's been some that are not eligible due to either inconsistencies in their application, maybe not completing the application. It is, you do need to show financial information and kind of go through a process. So some people just haven't completed it or just not even submitted the application once they got to the point of meeting with Echo Housing. We do try to explain to UC Village residents that the program has a certain amount of aid that it can provide, and there's some students that, are maybe over $20,000 owed to housing, and that our program's not necessarily going to be sufficient to kind of correct the situation and allow them to re-enroll. So it's a tough situation. However, our program has been structured broad enough that we can offer, if they get approved and finish the application process, a security deposit and 2 months rent for a more stable situation. So there's been some UC Village residents who have kind of realized, okay, it's time for me to sort of figure out something different, and this program's been able to provide an opportunity for them in that way. Yeah.
Appreciate that. And then one last question. I think this is more for the sake of potentially having guardrails on programs so they're not exploited. And I'm not trying to make assumptions about anyone in the village, but I'm also very much aware, folks who aren't, that UC Berkeley provides financial assistance through their Basic Needs Center in the form of emergency funds. Is there coordination with the campus to ensure that someone not potentially double dipping with Berkeley and the city or vice versa?
Yes, we did discover that pretty early on, that there were some UC, resources. So part of that sort of more in-depth application process I was mentioning is that they do need to show that they've gone to the Basic Needs Center and got that 1 month's rent already, that they've been to their, financial assistance, their financial aid office, and talked about all their options, whether they, just how they can make their package work better for them, that they've tried to be in touch with housing to work out any potential payment plan, although they're not doing that anymore. But, sort of really like, have you maximized all your resources? And then if not, or if you have and you're still in this situation, that then we can start to work through the application process with you. Yeah, so.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions from council? All right. I will close out questions for council, move on to public comment.
Thank you. Am I understanding correctly that this program, the $350,000, is the housing supplement assistance program? And can you break down specifically how much of that $350,000 goes towards staffing and how much goes to direct assistance? I'd like to hear about that. And because this kind of ties into the whole idea of who helps, who's able to help the people who need it the most. I am a single-family homeowner. I am very glad to pay my fair share towards helping people who need this assistance. And when it came to the Housing Advisory Committee's plans, it seems like they want to shift all that burden to the housing providers to do this. And I'm concerned, can it be clear, like, after ARPA is gone, does that mean what is the gap that's going to be in the current budget from what has been provided up until this point through ARPA funds, and what will then have to be filled by some other source? Because that's the real sticking point about how these programs can move forward. And so I hope that we have a very clear discussion about where the money's coming from, how much is for salaries, how much actually goes towards the assistance. And I also understand that maybe like when you provide counseling for people to find CalFresh and things like that, you're actually, those services are then helping to provide an additional benefit. Because if you can teach someone how to get access to more funds, then you're really using your services well. And so I can appreciate that too. But in the meantime, it'd be nice to know how much is for salaries specifically, because you should have that, I assume, in your calculations already. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening, Council. My name is Margie Marks. As a citizen of Albany, when I looked at this staff report, I felt a great deal of gratitude and pride about how you, and when I say you, I mean you collectively, council and staff, chose to spend the ARPA funds. I mean, when I look at it, you know, childcare, housing, food, small business assistance, these are all really things that are needed in this city, and the fact that that's how you chose to spend this money, I think is really wonderful, and I thank you for it. I am pleased to stand before you tonight in support of the resolution. I believe that from the outside, Albany appears to be this upper middle class haven. I look at houses selling for $3 million and think that just seems to reinforce the notion. I would ask you to look at the other side of Albany. Over 50% of the population is cost burdened with rent. Cost burden means that they are spending more on housing that can be sustained over a long period of time. To continue, the emergency rent support program advances the housing element, specifically Section 5D, which, quote, requires the city to complete an evaluation of potential measures to improve the housing security of low-income residents, particularly those who are vulnerable to displacement. That is exactly what this resolution does. I have met with several families who have been helped by the program. Those people include a single mom with 4 children living an abusive living situation, a disabled veteran, and a single mom with 3 children. Without that assistance, 7 children might be living on the streets. Unfortunately, the city cannot continue and is not continuing all of the ARPA programs. Maybe sometime each of the council members could go and see the line for food at the high school twice a month. The food pantry in the village used to be open 2 days a week, and now it's 5 days a week. The loss of the food distribution that Albany Cares was doing is huge. I hear from residents that got to that program, and I tell you, the one thing, and I've never heard about any other food distribution program, but they say that they felt like the food was so wonderfully curated, and if they put like all the stuff for someone to make fish tacos with a recipe in there. I mean, it was like that kind of care that was taken in that food, but that food program has had to end. So I hear from residents all the time. There is food insecurity in Albany right now, and I know that Albany Cares is doing everything it can to help. I also want to shout out to Albany Project Hope. I work with a group called Albany Cares, and in the last month, just in the last month alone, 2 individuals that lived in their cars on the street of Albany got into permanent housing. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, not seeing any comments online. We'll bring it back to council for discussion. Any comments from council members?
Well, I spoke to the Albany Cares has been doing more so than the economic development. I also want to recognize the work of staff on economic development. It's pretty astounding seeing what has happened, and economic development is part of it with Lower Solano, San Pablo, and Masonic, and now spreading along San Pablo. My daughter and I got a chance to enjoy, I think, one of those restaurants that received support to be here last Friday, and so it's just fantastic work. Thank you very much, and I'm very excited that it's going to continue.
Don't forget about our businesses below San Pablo too. So 3 blocks down there, but yeah.
Thank you.
I'm very, very, very pleased and happy to hear all of these programs are running so well, and that people are finding the support that they need, and I'm just so appreciative of staff and all you guys are doing. So well done. Yeah.
Any comments or discussion on this side?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo what the fellow council member said, that the work that both economic development's done and then all the efforts that have been done through Albany Cares and the various ARPA programs, I think have been so impactful for us as a community, and I think both to the previous council and us as a council today, I think our focus and staff's focus are really on providing that support for our residents and local businesses as opposed to backfilling what were anticipated consistently year on year to be budget deficits. I think was something that I'm really proud of, and I think we all as a community should be proud of that we spent that ARPA money for what it was really needed, which was for our residents and our businesses. And so that, I know that brings joy to my life. I also really appreciate that we have Albany Cares and that it's a local program that's helping people find assistance, whether it's assistance that we're able to provide or it's making sure that they're getting all the assistance that they can from UC or connecting to Alameda programs, because anyone who's ever in a situation where you are lost, and there is no guidance out there, having someone local, someone you can talk to, is such a lift off of your shoulders. I have not personally partaken in Albany Cares, but knowing that in the situations our family is needed and lost and not knowing where to go, having someone local, I think, is such an important thing. And so I'm very much in favor of continue to help support Albany Cares as much as we can. This all goes back to a conversation you might have had last city council about additional funds for us as a community. That'll be a topic, I'm sure, for another day. But that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Vice Mayor McQuaid, did you have any?
Just a couple of comments. First of all, thank you to all the staff that have worked so hard on this. It is really wonderful to think that as a community, we really do stand up for each other. And we talked tonight about standing up against hate. Well, this is a piece of it. The more flexible, the more fluid you can be, so you can react quickly to situations, I think is great. I don't think we want to lock you down to this dollar goes here, this dollar goes here. The one thing that does concern me, though, is what's going to happen going forward, and we don't know. I mean, I sit here and I think, we don't have a government right now. And we need to think about that. We do not have a government in this country. Maybe we will another day, but not today. So I think all of us need to be cognizant that this is fabulous, but we need to be thinking about going forward and where money's going to come from as the situation becomes more and more dire for people. And with that, I'll pass back to you.
Sorry, Mayor, may I?
Yeah.
Add something to Vice Mayor McQuaid's comments. One, Peggy, we are government, so there is local government. We are still here. There is still county government. The government's still there.
Yeah, but
might be a little bit lacking in other portions of government. But I would emphasize what Peggy's saying, because I mean everything that I've heard at League of California Cities conference, what we had at the East Bay Division meeting is we are not in a world where we can rely on federal funds. We're not in a world where we can expect that there might be another ARPA. We are in a world where our state is being targeted. And so the state funding that we might expect or wish for is also in jeopardy because the state itself is in jeopardy of losing funding. And so I think it is all the more imperative, as Councilmember McQuaid was asking earlier in questions, all the advice that is being given at every level that I've talked with other electeds or groups is to continue to diversify where you can provide support and how you provide supports. And that is going to mean reaching back into the communities around us and find those support organizations and partner with them. Because we are going to be, we are not going to be in a world of abundance. Not that we were truly ever abundant, but it is going to be harder times.
Thank you. What I will emphasize and state from the jump is that I'm in full support of the staff recommendation. Yes, I understand we have a federal government that's lacking, a leader that's lacking in more ways than one. Neither here nor there, but the reality is, and this is why I asked about quantifying the number of individuals who are impacted. If the dumpster continues to burn the way it's burning, we can't expect residents in our community to rely on any type of federal aid or assistance. And it truly is up to us at the local level to stand on business and really commit to what we were elected for, to represent everyone, to support folks who are entitled to live here, who are entitled to exist here, who are entitled to reap the benefits of good schools and safe communities. Not having monetary flexibility should never be a hindrance for someone to feel like, ever make someone feel like they simply can't live here. And I will say, I've mentioned this in the past, before I was elected, I had benefited from the resources at UC Berkeley. And I've said this story again, and I know it's a bit of a tearjerker, but I'll say it this time with a bit more assertiveness and not necessarily emotion. But before I was elected, my partner had fallen down a flight of stairs in the UC Village and fractured her leg in 3 different places, a trimolar fracture. If you want to know how bad that is, just look up videos of Alex Smith, the quarterback, and his injury, and that you'll get a sense of how bad it is. That happened 3 weeks before she gave birth to our son. He was already dealing with a litany of issues that we were concerned about. When that happened, she was out of work. I was on a PhD salary. PhD salary, when I say it out loud, may sound fancy. It's peanuts. And that was before we got a newly negotiated union contract. We actually went on strike shortly after that all went down. And so there was a lot happening at that time. Because, and I know this isn't an example of the city, but this is an example, a personal example of the magnitude of when resources are available to a community of people who need it. It was through the UC Berkeley's Basic Needs Center that I was able to at least stay afloat for that month. And they were able, similar to a public comment that's made about being able to direct people to additional resources to empower them. And there we were able to, get things rolling with the state, with the FMLA resources, disability resources. Things were moving really slow. At the county level, we were denied CalFresh benefits. I was told that they were going to give me a call. I was waiting for an hour for a phone call. That never happened. People who are low income and who are working sometimes multiple jobs don't have time to sit around a phone and wait for a phone call that's not going to happen. And I don't blame county staff. I blame the lack of funding and investment from the people who say they're going to put their money where their mouth is and they don't. And we have an opportunity to put our money where our mouth is. And we have an opportunity to not sit here and hark that, okay, well, the federal government, and I'm not taking jabs at you, Vice Mayor McQuaid, don't worry, to hark that the federal government is lacking. What do we do? And I say this as a general statement that we have so much power as local electeds. We could still talk to our county supervisor. We could still talk to our state senator. We could still talk to our congress member, all of which whom have been visiting our beautiful city, all of which whom want to get to know our council members, all of which whom can be advocates to help us close a gap that may exist, because that was a really valid point that one of our community members made. How are we going to close that gap? For me, I'm not concerned about what that gap is. I am concerned how we're going to close it. And I'm pretty confident we'll find ways, because we as a council, we as a cohort, I'm pretty confident in the relationship that we're able to have with our regional and state leaders. And I'm confident because I've been working my ass off to make sure that we have direct line of communication with them, that we are able to pick up a phone call or text them, and that they can come through for us. It doesn't stop there. Trust me when I say I'll go higher if I need to. I will talk to our governor if we need to. I will make this happen. Our council colleagues will make this happen because we rotate through mayorship. So I'll make sure our next mayor is empowered with all the same resources that I have. I'll make sure that everyone on council is empowered with that social capital, because we need to be able to find out how to close that gap. That's for damn sure, and we're gonna make that happen. Tonight isn't the night to figure out how to make that happen. Tonight, though, is the night where we make a decision: do we stand on business to go forward with staff recommendation, and make sure that we at least have some sense of social insurance to take care of community members when they need it, instead of being reactive and trying to figure out where are we going to pull the money from now. I don't want us to wait for there to be a fire to determine where we're going to pull funds to go pull out the fire, where are we going to go find the water to put out that fire. I'd rather make sure that we're getting ahead of it now. No, some may say it's fiscally irresponsible to not have a plan. I think it's socially irresponsible to not take care of fellow humans, especially in this time. And I don't question the integrity of anyone on this dais. I don't think anyone on this dais particularly is against the staff recommendation, but this is a public meeting. I think it needs to be publicly stated where we stand. And I hope my anecdotal story gives confidence to anyone who's listening that these programs make a difference, because if that program didn't come through for me, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I was very close to dropping out of that campaign race. Councilmember Mickey knows, Councilmember Jordan knows, I was going through a lot at that time. But it's programs like this that make a difference. You never know what reallocation of $50,000 would do. If it could mean putting someone at the dais in the future who could figure out how to pull out $500,000. I'm not making any promises that I'll do any of that, but you never know when you're giving that confidence and that sense of warmth and comfort to someone, that they're not as stressed. And when people aren't as stressed, I think we all know this, when we're not stressed, we get really creative, come up with solutions. Our city staff comes up with solutions when they're not stressed. And if we follow through with their recommendation to make sure that they have the resources they need, I have full confidence that our city staff is going to help us find creative solutions as well. I'm going to put a plug on myself. Do I have any other comments from council? If not, I am entertaining a motion at this time.
There was a question from a commenter that I want to take a chance and try to see if I can answer, and staff correct me if I don't understand it, because that helps me learn. So as I understand it, $200,000 of the $350,000 on an annualized basis is to continue the staffing of Albany Cares, and that's part of what allowed it to scale from a couple hundred families plus to almost 700 families. And so that's not just for administering the financial assistance program on rent, that's for connecting with all the resources. And then $150,000 is for the rental assistance. Okay, thank you.
Did you have a comment?
Okay. Then I will go ahead and move resolution 2025-66.
Second.
All right, we have a motion.
I saw her jump into the mic.
City Clerk?
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Lopez?
Yep.
Councilmember Hanson Romero?
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
And Councilmember Mackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, City Clerk, and thank you, council colleagues. Again, we're supporting programs like this.
Doing it all.
There are many deep benefits, and it shows that we make our commitment to our community and put our money where our mouth is. That said, we'll move on to item 10-2, Active Transportation Plan Update, Phase 2, Network Development. And I will pass it over to the city staff. Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Tonight, we'll be providing an update to you on the progress on the Active Transportation Plan, in particular the draft Active Transportation Networks. So I'll provide a brief update that what we've been up to since our last briefing on this, and then I'll hand it over to our consultant team to go through the community and stakeholder input we've received, present the draft networks themselves, and discuss network quality standards that we'll use to develop project priorities. And we'll conclude with next steps. Next slide, please. So since our last discussion on this, we have been working diligently on Phase 2, which took the goals and existing conditions analysis that you discussed at the conclusion of Phase 1 and have developed that into active transportation networks, which we're presenting tonight. Go ahead and next slide, please. And so we'll be presenting on that today. We've also been working on policy for the implementing the goals and networks that we'll be discussing in the third phase. We had a separate discussion with Council on Solano Avenue and have been developing the concepts and analysis of that per Council's direction from the May meeting. And we've been working through, similar to what we did with the first phase, we had a technical advisory meeting of city departments and other agency stakeholders to review the draft networks, had a public forum to discuss that at the Planning Expo in May, had an online comment period, May through July, and a Transportation Commission discussion in June. And we've since had a technical advisory committee meeting specifically to talk with our partners and departments on Solano Avenue as well. Next slide, please. So with that, I'll hand it over to the consultants to walk through stakeholder input.
Okay, is this on? Yeah. Good evening, members of council. It's good to see you all again. My name is Pete Rossetti. I am from the consultant Parametrics. I am the consultant project manager for this. I'm joined by Jen Schreiber from Parametrics, who is our deputy project manager, and Angie Chen from Fair and Peers, who is one of our leads for the network development and the mapping. We're each going to take a chance to talk tonight. Some of this is going to be a refresher from a lot of the things we heard in the first phase, but we hope to advance this forward. We will get into some technical examples, but hopefully not too deep or too much in the weeds, but it'll be a great preview for where we're going ultimately with this document and with the recommendations for specific projects. Justin covered quite an extensive outreach process that we've done. We did a lot of outreach in the first phase. We really wanted to understand issues and opportunities in the city. As we started to roll out the draft networks, we went back out to the community and to the technical advisory committee of agency stakeholders. We went to the Transportation Commission, as Justin noted, and we had about a 6-7 week online comment period. It was open for 2 different periods. What we see here is a very high-level summary of a lot of the comments that we heard for the pedestrian walking network. You can see the bullet points on the right indicate A lot of the comments that we saw in terms of areas to improve, so gaps in the network itself, which includes some areas of missing sidewalks or other ways where it's hard to get through certain connections. The call for upgrades at intersections and crossings, specifically on the PED network, intersections and crossings were really noted as an area where a lot of improvement is possible. Traffic calming for PED safety, especially in terms of the speed of motor vehicles. Sidewalk quality and maintenance, we got a lot of comments about the state of repair of the sidewalks, and some parts are broken or crumbling or need to be fixed. Safety around school zones, widening sidewalks in school zones, but also other key activity areas like parks and commercial areas, and a general call for better lighting on a lot of sidewalks and paths. And you can see from the heat map on the left, just to kind of outline where some of those locations are, we have a GIS comment database that staff has that shows all this. It's lots of comments, and so as a way to kind of visually represent where we got comments about the most for PEDs, you can see kind of, if you squint, you can kind of see a shape of a lot of the city's major avenues, including Solano and Marin and San Pablo, excuse me. And then you can see some of the key intersections where a lot of the heat occurs, where we got lots of comments. So that's a very high-level summary of the outlook of the outreach we did and the input we got on the PED network. And then if you can go to the next slide. Similarly, on the biking and rolling network, the heat map looks kind of similar. There's some different areas of heat, but we see a lot of the same corridors, a lot of the same intersections, and I think everyone on the council probably is aware of some of those challenging areas in the city. The bike comments, we got a lot of comments about connectivity and gaps. The city's bike network is very extensive. A lot of the low-hanging fruit has been done. The city's got a very great bike network existing. And so now at this stage of the plan, we're really trying to tackle some of the more complex stuff, and there are some notable gaps and missing connectivity in some areas. Obviously, a call for infrastructure enhancements and quality improvements in areas where we may have a certain type of facility. There were calls for it to be upgraded, especially in streets that are busy. Of course, that's when we run into a lot of the space constraints where we're trying to balance space for different modes. A lot of comments about intersections, similar to the PEDs, and finally calls for traffic calming and enforcement, again, similar to the PEDs. Okay, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to turn over to Angie, who has a few slides to cover the development of the draft networks and to show the maps, and then she's going to turn it back over to me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what the lines on the maps actually mean. So, Angie?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. Angie Chen from Fair and Peers, and I'll be presenting on the draft bicycle and pedestrian networks. So there were many sources of input that we used when developing the draft networks. The first is direct community comments, which Pete just went over. We received comments through a few different methods, including an online survey, interactive web map, and the in-person planning expo. And then what we did is we compared these comments to the existing networks to understand where there are gaps and opportunities to fill those gaps as part of updating the networks. Secondly, as part of the existing conditions phase, we conducted a bicycle level of comfort analysis to understand how relatively comfortable Albany streets are for people riding bikes. We shared our findings with the public in phase 1 and updated our methodology based on feedback to ensure that the comfort level was really reflective of people's experiences. And thirdly, we did a safety data analysis looking at collision history over the past 10 years and identifying collision hotspots. And lastly, we received input from the Technical Advisory Committee and the Transportation Commission and have incorporated their feedback into the networks that we're presenting tonight. Next slide, please. So before we get into the network maps, I want to talk briefly about the framework that we used when developing this network. For both the pedestrian and the bicycle networks, we looked at them as a series of nested networks. There are some streets that are on this base level network and some that are on a smaller subset of streets that we're calling the high comfort network. For pedestrians, the base network on the top left includes all sidewalks, paths, and trails, basically anywhere where people can walk in the city of Albany. The ATP will be looking at minimum standards that apply to these facilities citywide. The high comfort pedestrian network includes streets that we envision as having the highest level of priority for pedestrians, and this may look like having additional enhancements to make sure it's really comfortable and enjoyable for those pedestrians, which can look like safety treatments and other amenities. For bicyclists, the base network includes streets with any type of bicycle facility, so that can look like bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, bike boulevards, or bike routes, separated bike lanes. whereas the High Comfort Network has a subset of those, a specific type of bike facility or types of bike facilities and treatments that make them more comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. And in the next section, Jen will get into some examples of what this could actually look like when applied. So moving on to the pedestrian network, next slide, thank you. This map shows the pedestrian priority network in light green, and that's also known as the High Comfort Network. These are corridors that serve key destinations such as commercial areas, schools, community centers, and recreation. We expect to see higher foot traffic on these routes, which makes them really prime candidates for prioritizing pedestrian safety improvements. This map also shows pedestrian priority intersections in orange. During community engagement, we heard a lot about the importance of intersection safety for pedestrians. Priority intersections include any intersection where two priority streets intersect, as well as additional intersections that have collision history, serve key destinations, or received a lot of comments expressing community concern during community engagement. Next slide, please. Next, we have the bicycle network. This map shows the base bicycle network. Again, that's that broader set of streets in blue and dark green, with the blue representing on-street bikeways and the dark green representing shared use paths. Underneath those lines, the High Comfort Network is highlighted in a light green. And again, that's a subset of the base network that the city can focus more robust improvements on to make them really comfortable for people of all ages and abilities and make them really comfortable environments for people biking. I do want to note one error on this map, which is that San Pablo should be shown as high comfort in order to reflect the Transportation Commission's recommendation to consider it as a long-term aspirational vision for high comfort facilities. We made that edit to include it as an on-street bikeway, but failed to include it as high comfort. So we'll be making that edit. And similar to how we have pedestrian priority intersections, we also have bicycle priority intersections, which are shown on this map as signalized and unsignalized. These intersections are areas that experience higher amounts of conflicts and traffic volumes, making it more stressful for bicyclists to navigate. The unsignalized priority intersections show where cross-traffic does not stop, meaning that bicyclists must wait for a gap in traffic to proceed. And this was an issue that was raised frequently in community engagement, especially on Albany's north-south routes like Adams and Keynes, which cross very high traffic streets. And for both the pedestrian and bicycle networks, we considered connections to neighboring jurisdictions, which the TAC provided input on. These maps show some potential alignments for these connections, which are a pending future study. And I'll pass it back to Pete.
Thank you, Angie, for running through that. And I know it's a bit abstract to look at the network maps and see all these colored lines. And so we really wanted to dig a little deeper right now and understand kind of essentially what do those lines mean. And the way that we do that is by defining network quality standards. So essentially, what does it mean to be on the base network or the high comfort network? So like it says on the slide, the quality standards are specifically how we define what the facilities are. They're developed from the latest guidance and best practices. There's a lot of resources for this. What you see here, the photos of some screenshots, is kind of a best of list, but there's actually quite a bit more as we dive deeper in. There's quite a few things that we can turn to understand what makes a high quality facility for pedestrians or for cyclists. The one on the left, the Urban Bikeway Design Guide, is really kind of the go-to standard for bikeways, and we're going to dig more into that one specifically as we move on. But I wanted to show there's quite a bit that we can draw from to understand best practices. Next slide, please. So as Angie went over, there's two different networks. There's the pedestrian walking network and the biking rolling network. And then within that, there's two different quality standards for each of those. The base network kind of is what we would consider a minimum standard. And then the high comfort network is what we want to define as a higher standard for those modes for key focus areas. And like I just went over, there's a lot of tools that we can get to understand how to achieve those standards. NACTO is, I would say, probably the leading one. They have a lot of different guides for bikes and for peds, but there's quite a bit of other guidance. And what those really provide us is kind of menus of options, various treatments and things we can do to get the bike and ped network up to the standard that we want. And just wanted to note that a lot of times those treatments in terms of the physical things you might do are kind of in two different categories. And there's things you can do to the segments, in other words, the linear street segments, and things you can do focused at the intersections and crossings. And so we're going to show some of those toolboxes a little bit, some photos of some examples. These are things that we've seen before. And we ultimately where we're going with this is for every segment and every intersection in the city that are on the bike ped networks, we want to have, we want to understand, does it currently meet the standard that we have? And if it does not, what specifically can we do, whether that's one thing or maybe a menu of different things we could do to get it up to the standard that we want? And so I'm going to go over a little bit of that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jen, and she's going to pick, I think we've got 2 or 3 examples that we're going to show of specific streets and how we kind of operationalize that. And that's how, that's really a preview of where we're going in the final phase of this project, where we actually convert this into a list of projects to get the city to achieve the vision. Next slide, please. So first, we want to start somewhat simply and look at the standards for the pedestrian and walking network. So we tried to keep these tables simple. There certainly is a lot of detail you could add to some of this, but in other words, but in an effort to keep it high level, looking at the pedestrian walking network, a simple base standard to establish that minimum would be a sidewalk or path with ample width and no obstructions. Again, there's a lot of detail you could add there. You could add that it is compliant with the city's street design standard. You could add things like ADA or other types of regulations, and we certainly can add that if we want to get very, very specific. But in general, the standard that we're looking at a base network for the a base standard for the PED network, when we look at a street, does it have a sidewalk or a path with ample width and no obstructions? And if it meets that standard, then we would consider that that meets the base standard for the network. In an area where we've designated as a high comfort corridor or a high comfort intersection, we want to meet that base standard, a sidewalk or path with ample width. And we also, for the pedestrian, it's very much on a case-by-case basis. It's a little less prescribed and a little more judgment-based. But I think we can think of types of streets where we might want to do things like what's listed there: additional width, additional lighting, trees and landscaping, shade structures, furniture, art, commercial kiosks. Things like that are things that we might want to see on a commercial street, a street near a park, a civic facility, commercial areas, schools, things like that. And so we really want to be able to target that on a case-by-case basis rather than prescribing at this high level, this is exactly what a street like this will get, really kind of a judgment-based thing. If we go to the next slide, I think we'll see a couple examples. Thinking about what's in our toolbox, a great thing we can do is look at streets that we know of that kind of meet that test visually. We picked 2 different ones. There's quite a few to look at. These 2 kind of showed 2 different types of streets that have really been adapted to prioritize the pedestrian mode in different ways. And there's certainly a lot of other streets we could look at. If we go to the next slide, I think we've got some tools for intersections and crossings. These are more about physical facilities and some of the technology that we might use to make the crossings better. Things like lighted signals, curb extensions, which shorten the crossing distance, high-vis crosswalks, median islands. These are mostly pictures taken from Albany, so these are things that we know from the city. Okay, if we go to the next slide, I guess we want to just summarize some key findings, and I've touched on these a little bit already, but in general, we found that the base pedestrian network is in fairly good shape. That doesn't mean that nothing needs to be done, but overall, we found that there's sidewalks on most streets, that they're relatively complete, and there's not a lot of gaps. But there are some, and that actually helps us know where we want to focus on. These bullets here that you see are very similar to what we saw at the public outreach slides. Upgrades at intersections, installing missing sidewalks, widening sidewalks in key areas, improved maintenance, improved lighting. So overall, that's a look at the PED network and the types of things that we're going to specifically call out in phase 3 as we turn all this into a real project list of specific areas where we've identified those things should happen to get the pedestrian walking network up to standard. So it's a really quick high-level look at that. And I think right now we're going to pivot to the biking rolling network. Next slide, please. Okay, changing gears briefly to the biking rolling network. It's a little more complex, but that's kind of a good thing because there's very specific standards that we can turn to and more detailed guidance to understand what makes a comfortable facility for biking and rolling. So at our base standard, we turn to NACTO, which is, again, I guess I didn't cover what NACTO is. It's the National Association of City Transportation Officials. Really, again, kind of a gold standard, and we're going to have a slide later that looks a little more in depth on some of the things that they've published, but they really provide specific guidance on what comfortable biking and rolling facilities should look like. They do that in kind of two different levels. They too have kind of a base standard or a minimum standard, and then their high comfort standard they call, and you can see it in the second column, all ages and abilities, or AAA, and that's actually a name standard that they've done that kind of takes the minimums and raises them up a little bit to make them more comfortable. And we're going to go over what that specifically means in a moment. The other piece to the standards that we wanted to draw from is the level of comfort maps that we made in the first phase. And Angie covered those a little bit. That was one of the sources in drawing the network. I think if we go to the next slide, please, I think there's an example of one of those comfort maps. You may recall this from the first phase. We took a look at the level of traffic stress, which is a accepted metric, and then we combined that and made some edits based on a lot of input we got from stakeholders and the TC and from this council about really getting deeper than the metrics, understanding what is the lived experience on some of these streets. So in some cases, the metric said, oh, the street's pretty good, and people chimed in and said, you know, there's really parts of it that aren't. And so this is kind of a customized map, a tailored map for the city. And so we want to make sure that our biking and rolling streets and projects everywhere on those networks meets a minimum standard as well. So we want to draw from the NACTO standard, and we want to look back at the comfort ratings and make sure we can get the streets up to the standard that we want for each one. So if we go to the next slide, please. This digs a little bit into what NACTO provides, and this first table is about the base network, and it starts to get a little bit technical and a little bit wonky, but we've tried to keep it at a high level. Looking at the base network and really looking at what are the tools that we have to get the facilities to the standard that we want. You can see along the left side, our main tool is to construct bikeways themselves, and I think in a slide or two we'll see a picture of some of those. I think everyone's probably familiar with the different types of bikeways. The other things we can do are less about the physical bikeways that we create, but about regulating and moderating the other traffic on the street. And so the main tools that we can use to get streets to the right level of comfort for bikes is to regulate motor vehicle speed and regulate motor vehicle volume. These are the same things that go into, these are some of the same things that go into the level of traffic stress metric that originally looked at our comfort ratings. And so after quite a bit of research and lived experience from all around the country and around the world, we really have a good understanding of what makes a bikeway truly comfortable and suitable for all users. And it's not simply about whether there's a striped bike lane, but also about what the other vehicles are doing on that street. So we can see if we're able to regulate motor vehicle speed and motor vehicle volume, it provides a different equation for what bikeway types we might pick for a certain street. So if we go to the next slide, please. Taking it up a notch, looking at the high comfort network, all ages and abilities, or AAA, again, is kind of the gold standard. It's published by NACTO, but it also is adopted by policy by both Alameda CTC and their local bicycle master plan guidelines, which is the guidance document for this plan that we're writing right now. And it's also part of the MTC Complete Streets policy, noting that anything funded by MTC with bikeways would need to also fit the all ages and ability standard. So this is a well-accepted best practice, and it's been adopted at the policy level. And it's the main tool that we want to use to construct our high comfort bikeway network. So if we go to the next slide, there's a similar table, and the table may look the same, but it's a little more detailed, and the standards are a little bit more rigid to understand what makes a truly high comfort or all ages and abilities bikeway. Again, we see the same tools in our toolbox. Number one is to construct bikeways of various types, and you can see those listed down the left column. And the other is to regulate motor vehicle speed and to regulate motor vehicle volume in the ways you can see on the slide as well. And if we go to the next slide, these are some photos from the toolbox of types of bikeway facilities and types of intersection treatments that we can use. You may recognize these from the first phase. We also showed these to the public, so they had a good understanding of what all these were. And if you go to the next slide, just wanted to talk a little bit about specifically controlling speed and volume, because I know we often think about bikeway planning, and it's about, do you build the bike lane with the buffer or not with the buffer, or do you take out the parking or whatever. But regulating motor vehicle speed and volume is the other tools we have, the other levers we can pull to get streets up to the standards that we want. And so how do we do that? I'm sure you've probably heard me say this up on this dais, but I'm sure you've probably heard this before, but the 3 E's enforcement, education, and engineering, and that's often been extended. I think there's 4 or 5 E's now. But really looking at the basic tools we can use to achieve safety on our streets. And for motor vehicle speed, especially enforcement and education are key. But for things that we can physically do on the streets, engineering tools also, and you can see a couple of them here, and I'm sure you recognize them from our city and from neighboring cities in terms of ways we can calm traffic and even regulate the volume of auto traffic that goes down the streets. And if we go to the next slide, I think Jen is going to take us even a little bit deeper into the weeds, but hopefully with some examples to see how this might work. And I just wanted to preview by noting this process that Jen's going to go through is what we're doing for every single street on the active transportation networks, every single block. We're looking at, does the street currently meet our standard? What's going on that street? And if it doesn't meet the standard, what are the options? Hopefully not just one thing, but what is the menu of options, a list of things we could do to bring it up to that standard? And so in phase 3, at the end of this project, we will have a project list. In fact, we have a network database already where most of this is already done, and we're going through QC and technical review right now. But we will end up with a list of recommendations for every street and every block and every intersection on these networks that is drawn from these standards and from these menus of options. So I'll stop there, and I'll let Jen show us some examples.
Thank you, Pete. Good evening, council members and city staff. So like Pete said, I am going to be walking through some examples. We have our standards. We know what the levers are to sort of help us get there. So how do we apply this? I'll start off by saying that the examples that I'm going to show and everything that we've been talking about so far with these specific standards are relevant to road segments. We know intersections have their own issues. We've heard this a lot from people. If you build a comfortable bike lane, but there's no way to get across the street if it's crossing a busy road, that's still a significant issue. So what we're looking at right now is focusing on the road segments themselves, and we're developing a similar process as well as standards to deal specifically with those intersections. So first off is an example from our base network. So we're looking at Jackson Street, specifically from Castro Street to Buchanan Street. And this roadway, as you can see in this image, it's largely residential, 1 lane in each direction with parking on both sides. The total right-of-way is 64 feet, where between the curbs narrows down significantly to 30 feet. Based on the comfort level analysis that we performed earlier in the study, a large part of the corridor has a comfort level of 2, so pretty good. However, that last bit from Solano to Buchanan is comfort level 5, so there's people are feeling a lot more discomfort when they're cycling on that portion of the street. And this roadway is similar in nature to a lot of other roadways that we see in Albany, such as Adams Street. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we have our standards. What is our vision for this street in our active transportation plan network? So as we've discussed, this section of Jackson is on our base network. So we're looking to that base NACDO standard that Pete had elaborated on. We're looking at those NACDO minimum guidelines for biking and rolling facilities, and ideally having a comfort level of 3 or better. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of information here, but this is essentially how we're applying what we're seeing on the ground to what these standards are. So this first table shows what we're seeing on the ground. We know that Jackson Street is largely striped as a bicycle boulevard. There is a section from Solano to Buchanan that has a southbound bike lane. We are recording motor vehicle speeds of around 26 to 31 miles per hour and seeing motor vehicle volumes daily of around 1,100 to 3,400. So the table below this is essentially, this is our standard. This is our NACDO base standard looking at the target motor vehicle speed as well as the motor vehicle volume per day. And we can see that under existing conditions, the segment, it doesn't meet the conditions for all types of bikeways. So protected bike lane, you can essentially have any motor vehicle speed, any volume. The cyclists are physically protected. So, check the box there. We meet those standards. However, based on the speed, the roadway really doesn't meet that minimum standard for any of the other bike facilities. And based on those volumes, currently, it only meets the standard for those constrained bike lanes or constrained bike lanes with a buffer that can essentially comfortably accommodate higher vehicle volumes. So based on this, we have a few options. So next slide, please. And we're presenting, there are several options for every street segment mostly, and these all have different trade-offs, so we can walk through them. So first off, you can designate the roadway as an advisory bike lane or a bike boulevard. This would more or less keep parking as it is, but you would need to do traffic calming. So speeds would need to be 25 miles per hour or lower. Vehicle volumes would need to be 3,000 vehicles or lower. So going back to those tools that Pete had shown, there's a number of items that we can use off those menus to help get to those targets, but there would need to be some work done to meet those targets. On the other hand, we could implement a non-buffered or a buffered bike lane. This would have parking impacts. However, we already meet the vehicle volume standards here, so we'd only really need to work on lowering those vehicle speeds. And then again, if a protected bikeway was implemented, we're good as is in terms of existing conditions. The speeds check that box, the volumes check that box. Of course, there are going to be other implications, including parking impacts on a narrow street such as Jackson. So again, just a number of options that we can use to fit within these NACDO standards for this space network. Next slide shows an example. So this is moving to our high comfort network example, looking specifically at Brighton Ave from San Pablo to Masonic. Kind of similar right-of-way here. It's 60 feet in total, 36 curb to curb. Again, we're seeing one travel lane in each direction, parking on both sides, again, largely residential, but we do see other uses along the corridor as well. And this had a comfort level of 2. So based on our standards, pretty good, not too bad. Next slide, please. So again, now we're looking at our high comfort network. So these are the sort of more stringent standards that we are attempting to meet, typically focusing on lower speeds, lower volumes, and again, that higher city comfort level, or lower numerically higher in terms of comfort. Next slide, please. So again, currently, you can see the existing conditions in that top table. There are no striped bike facilities on this particular segment of Brighton Ave. We're seeing motor vehicle speeds around 23 to 24 miles per hour, and motor vehicle volumes are higher than what we saw in that last example, around 4,400 to 4,500 vehicles daily. So do these conditions meet that AAA facility standard? As you can see, again, protected bike lane, no problem. Vehicle speeds, vehicle volumes are within that, any kind of standard. However, as we're seeing with AAA standards, the targeted speeds are lower. So 10 miles per hour or less for shared space, 20 miles an hour or less for a lot of the other facilities, 25 miles an hour or less for constrained bike lanes with buffers. So we're good there. It does meet that standard. And then meanwhile, the motor vehicle volumes per day, again, are lower as well. So as is, again, it would meet the standard for a constrained bike lane with a buffer, but under these existing conditions, volumes are too high to implement other bikeway types under an all ages and abilities standard without making some changes. Next slide, please. So again, we have options. First off is the option of implementing a constrained bikeway with a buffer, so a buffered bike lane. This would have parking implications, but would meet those standards based on speed and volume. And then again is the option to implement a protected bikeway. Again, parking implications, but the existing conditions in terms of speeds and volumes are already fine, so there wouldn't have to be any traffic calming or any other tools used to meet those standards there. So these are just some examples. Like Pete said, we're going through and we're doing this for all of the road segments on both our base network and our high comfort network, just to get a sense of how can we meet these standards, and again, what are the options, what are the trade-offs that we would be seeing. Next slide, please. And so we do have a few key focus areas where we're looking at a little more detail. These are sort of our special cases that offer unique challenges, and we've, we brought this up with City Council and Traffic Commission and city staff to really try to dig into the uses and the goals for these corridors. So Solano Avenue, we are working on a separate task alongside this current effort to evaluate options in terms of adding bikeways. And then San Pablo Avenue, at the last Traffic Commission meeting, it was recommended to include this in the high comfort network more as a long-term vision. And as we see opportunities and as things can be coordinated with other ongoing projects. So these maybe are being considered outside this mold that we've just set forth, but these are obviously very important streets, important to the network, important to the city, and so we're considering them with extra care as well. So I will turn it back over to the city staff to present on some next steps for the project.
Thank you, Jen. So next steps after this discussion, we will, as we discussed, move into prioritizing projects that are needed to build the networks that are shown tonight and per the council's discussion tonight. We'll be working to finalize the policies and support needed to meet the goals that we set out in the phase 1 and to continue to build out the network. We'll continue our work on Solano Avenue design and engagement process and bring a discussion at an upcoming Transportation Commission meeting before bringing that to City Council. And we'll do our final round of stakeholder engagement for this next phase, develop the draft document, and bring all of that back to City Council for consideration. And with that, we'll open it up for questions and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll bring it to council for any question. Go for it, Councilmember Mickey.
Super excited having this come back. I'm sure Vice Mayor McQuaid will share my enthusiasm for this. We both served on was then called the Traffic and Safety Commission when the first active transportation plan was passed. So it is nice to see it coming back with a refresh. One of the things I really appreciate on your maps is you show the networks in neighboring jurisdictions. I think that was something early on, it was a little bit hard. The one thing that I really love about this is the amount the network has grown in the last 12 years, both within Albany and in neighboring communities. So my question circles back primarily to one street, and it's primarily because in the last 2 years I've gotten to know the street a little better, and that's Carmel. And so Carmel between Solano and the city limits. So on the bike network, we show, I guess we at one point had already included part of Carmel from the city limit to Portland as a bikeway. But I just don't had any consideration been given to extending that all the way to Solano. And my main reason there being is that Santa Fe is a great street. I'm comfortable riding Santa Fe. I've got an e-bike. I don't care about the hill. Carmel is nice and flat. So you can get on Carmel all the way up deep into El Cerrito on a level street, whereas Santa Fe, if you don't have an e-bike, you're putting in a workout. Maybe Preston's fine with that kind of workout, but and then you have Key Route, which is flat, but there's a lot going on in Key Route, and so I'm just a question about whether or not you all had looked at Carmel for the bicycle network. I think less so probably for the pedestrian, but just given that it connects Solano Avenue, it goes to Washington and Portland or east-west connectors. It gets to Albany Memorial Park, and then it connects on to El Cerritos. I just had a question about that bike route.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that question. Is it possible to put the bike network map back on the screen so we can all take a look? I know off the top of my head, that's why I wanted to look at the map so I can understand exactly what the segments were that you were talking about. But we drew a lot from the existing networks that were already there. And the intent there was there's been quite a bit of work that led into it. To be honest, the city's bike network is pretty good. If you kind of blur your eyes and just look at the blue lines and the green lines, it's got like pretty good bones. And so We didn't want to reinvent the wheel where we didn't have to. We looked at the analysis, we refreshed it where we could. Carmel certainly could be an option, and like I was saying, if you look at the squint test, you could extend the blue line down to Solano. I don't recall specifically what the input was for that. I'd have to check our notes in terms of what kind of considerations or discussion happened for that, and especially in terms of the volumes and speeds. But that's a great comment, and we're at the stage where we're looking at this network. Nothing's set in stone, so this is a great time to bring those ideas up, and that might prompt a revision to the network.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I think the reason why I love Carmel is it's flat. It's much more approachable for all abilities and ages. I don't know that it needs to be designed at that level, given I never feel like there's a ton of traffic on Carmel, nor high speeds, but just knowing that that is another option. Because again, I just think of Key Route and Santa Fe have their own issues.
Thank you.
I'll just add that we did have a discussion of Santa Fe and Curtis at the Transportation Commission, which is reflected here, but we didn't, look at a Western alternative to that.
Thank you.
I don't know that I've ever ridden Curtis, but I think it might also have some topography issues. And it also doesn't connect to El Cerrito's network.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Carmel. It's because it's a wider street too, and it's flat. It's very friendly to any sort of mobility on that street, and it's not heavily used with cars.
Great.
Either. Yeah. Whereas, like you were mentioning, Key Route can be an absolute nightmare because everybody is trying to avoid Masonic, and so because of the traffic lights, and so they're flying down Key Route, and they don't even stop half the time. So Key Route, I would think, is a terrible, terrible idea to put anything there. So I would, and plus also we've got the Greenway right below. It doesn't make sense to have two so parallel running along together.
So we're in questions part, so I'll hold my discussion on that until we get back to discussions. But
Any additional questions?
Yeah, thanks for the comments and the questions. Are you talking about all of Key Route or Key Route south of Solano, where it's really close to the Greenway? That it wouldn't make sense to include that. Or are you saying all of Key Route?
So I'm saying pretty much all of Key Route. I mean, yeah, and it doesn't make sense to start something somewhere and then have it drop off, in the other part. So it as far as one continuous flowing, block that, like you said, El Cerrito to, Also, I mean, it was kind of funny with the heat maps. Did you notice, I'm curious to when the heat maps were done, because I'm curious when it was in school versus when it's not in school, because I noticed a lot of those heat map bubbles are definitely school related. So, I mean, did you notice that?
I did not. Because my kids are long out of school, so you look at what's in front of you. Unfortunately, it's the human tendency. So questions that I had for both networks. The maps show an alignment study for crossing Cornesis Creek, either at 8th, 9th, 10th, or some combination thereof. And I was just curious if you describe and discuss what that is, where that comes from, what its intent is.
Sure. And I guess I don't want to imply that there is an active study going on, but that in our existing conditions phase, where we took input on the opportunities and issues, there was definitely several comments about kind of closing some of those gaps at the north end and the south end of the city. And we initially, I think, had just one line or a big dot there, and then when we went to TC and we did the second round of outreach, we heard some additional comments about, well, maybe it should be here, maybe it should be there, maybe it should be there. We need to coordinate with Berkeley and with El Cerrito. So at this level, without going kind of too deep and doing a separate study on each one of those, we are trying to represent the idea that there is a desire for north-south connections at both of those locations. But there's a lot of issues, especially in terms of engineering, the mobility networks, and dealing with the adjacent cities. And of course, those are also over waterways as well. So it's not really within the scope and budget of this study to kind of go much deeper into that. But again, what we heard is at least from a good number of comments, a desire to have some sort of links there.
Thank you. And then specifically for the sidewalk user network, the same question for the Cordonesis Creek crossing alignment. I'm just curious because I understand that crossing alignment study is being more about people scooting and biking, whereas sidewalk San Pablo is fine now for people walking as a segment in that section. And I don't think if it was only for sidewalk users that there would be a push to have this alignment study. There are other places along Cerrito Creek further to the west where people are interested in having a bridge. And there has been a study of that. So I was just curious why that was shown on this network map.
Well, and again, I think that's based on comments that we heard, a desire, because we have kind of pieces that almost the connections there, right, but not quite. So this forum is a great opportunity for the council to kind of adjust those recommendations if you feel that there's a more prudent place to make that connection, or if it's not kind of worth additional resources to go too much deeper into one of those connections. But this mostly responds to the input that we've heard to this point.
Thank you. Let's see. There's in the rubric for the rolling network and the high comfort has a range of motorist volumes as the criteria, and I'm just curious, what does that mean, having a range? I mean, how do you have to ultimately pick a specific threshold of volume. So what does the range mean, and how do you pick the threshold within that range that you're going to use for discriminating between different facility types to be appropriate?
That's a good question. I think, those are general guidelines. And in fact, a lot of the traffic counts that we have, traffic counts in general are not very exact because you get a range of numbers and you try to average those out over a day, over a weekday. And so I think if I don't know if it's possible to go to one of those slides where we had the examples up. If you keep going, where we had the specific street, we looked at Jackson and wasn't that one? Sorry, one second. That one right there. So I think this is the example that we used for Brighton, and this shows a range. And that's a really good point. I guess the way that we viewed it as the maximum number, the upper number is the maximum bound, and so if it fell within that, that's okay. But that's a pretty nuanced question, and I off the top of my head, I don't know the specific rationale behind NACTO showing a range there, because for most of their tables, it's just a single number. But again, as you can see up on the top, when we look at the existing volumes, those all came in ranges too. And in fact, we have with staff, there's a really big table of all the counts they've gotten, and some have gotten more counts and over time. So we tried to average those out and everything. So it's not an exact science, but we tried to kind of treat the maximums as maximums, I think would be the short answer.
Yeah, thanks. The county is going through developing a new active transportation plan as well. And they're also using the active rubric. So I put the same question to the county staff. So whoever gets the answer why first, I will share it with the other.
Oh, great.
The other agency.
I'm gonna try to find that out. I would think looking in the Urban Bikeway Design Guide for NACTO, I would hope that they would go into some of that rationale.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And I think on this, well, I'll leave that for deliberative comments. Disclosing that I live on Talbot, and I say I have some neighbors who are the only people left in the room who also live on Talbot, have been here the whole time, which I'm amazed by and quite intensely curious what comment they're going to have. But I noticed Talbot, there's only 2 blocks that are included in the high comfort network for rolling, and I was just curious why that is, what the thinking was behind that. There's 2 blocks on either side of Solano.
You're getting really good at flipping these slides. You're going to know them really well by the end. Keep going. Keep going. Almost. That one. Okay. And so you were referring to Talbot. Okay, so the middle section's on the high comfort network.
Yeah.
sorry if it's kind of blurry. And so what we're referring to is Talbot right here, and now the middle section's on the High Comfort Network. Off the top of my head, I don't know specifically the reasoning behind that. We're going to have to check our notes and get back to you. There's a lot of segments and a lot of analysis that we've done. I vaguely remember discussing that, and we were talking about.
I can jump in here.
Do you, Justin,
So-
do you remember?
Yeah, so I think in there, Keynes and Adams came up as the priority in that zone for us to do all ages and abilities. But when we reviewed access to all the schools, that was leaving off Cornell Elementary. So we connected from Dartmouth up to Washington to connect Cornell access to the rest of the network.
Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Any
Saved me
additional questions from council?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I have several thoughts that I'm going to try to weave into a question, but if you think I'm stretching it too far, I can bring it back to a comment. So let's see if I can grammatically do this. Can we have all of our red lights or all of our signals be no right turn on red? Is that, it's one of the things that we hear a lot, and I see a lot as a pedestrian. People sort of wave at the red light and zoom through. And it seems like if it was consistently no right turn anywhere in the city, that would be useful. And along with that, could we move all the no right turn signs so they're visible? They're in odd places, I think. And my last one is, Mark, you probably want to close your ears. Can we, as we're looking at traffic calming, include, and I'm going to use the phrase artistic crosswalks? We have the rainbow crosswalks on 2 locations. If we could expand that and perhaps have other types of artistic crosswalks, that would be, I think that would be great. So those are all can-we's, to make them questions.
Great, thank you for those questions. In terms of the no right turn on red, I would have to defer to some of my traffic engineer colleagues to understand how far the city's authority goes there, and some of the members of this council may even know. But my understanding is the city has pretty wide leeway on its ability to regulate those intersections. I've never seen a city where they had every single one like that, but I'm not sure in terms of the regulatory piece there. In terms of bike ped safety, I think that's a great idea. I know a lot of cities have been installing the leading pedestrian indicators, the LPIs. There's some in this city where the walk goes first 5 to 7 seconds before the red. That's kind of a compromise. But again, I'm not sure about the traffic engineering regulations. I do know the city would have authority to do that quite a bit, but I'm not sure if it can do it everywhere. For the artistic crosswalks, that's certainly an option, and I'm not sure if the city has a program for that, if there's an existing program or how those are done, but I know those are usually done at the programmatic level, and there has to be allowances for the ongoing maintenance and things like that as well. But that certainly is an option, and they're in cities all over California.
And about moving the signs?
Oh, and about the signs. The placement of the signs also, I think, is regulated by the MUTCD, by the traffic regulations, and I believe they certainly need to be visible. I'm not sure of the specifics in terms of their placement, but if there are any signs that aren't very visible, that's certainly something that we should raise. I don't know if that's something necessarily for the active transportation plan to address, except maybe through a policy, but certainly through either the streets department or maintenance or something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll take it to public comment. And we'll see how public comments work in your favor, Preston, whether you have a friendly commute home or not.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell. As noted, I live on Talbot Avenue. I'm here just to see how this active transportation plan is being presented, because this is something that's fascinating. I walk or bike pretty much every day in the city of Albany. The one thing I will comment on, I love this whole idea that it should be a walkable and bikeable city. And the one thing I will comment on, you mentioned the slide that there's the 3 E's of enforcement and education and engineering. But then everything we heard pretty much felt like engineering. And I guess you hire a design firm, it's kind of expected you're going to get a design back. But I do worry about that we have a lot of traffic rules and regulations, and we're talking about moving signs and, you know, can we change our light timing? But no one even stops at stop signs, as the council member noted. I mean, that is such a basic thing that I worry we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on bright green paint, and no one's going to pay any attention. You go anywhere in the city, I literally see someone run a stop sign every single day in the city of Albany. I have probably, in the 15 years I've lived here, seen a half dozen people pulled over for that, you know, or pulled over for something. But it just feels like if we can't make the basic traffic rules we have work, why bother with any of this? And it's not to say any of this is bad. This is all great, but none of it seems like these engineering solutions in traffic calming aren't really going to solve the problems if people are blowing them off. I mean, after, when was it, 2015, when they built the apartment buildings in El Cerrito Plaza, and there was a lot of packed city council meetings about traffic calming on the streets coming out of the plaza. And at the end of the day, they put a couple speed bumps in and everyone hits them at 30 miles an hour and didn't really do anything. And so I'd just like to ask the city council to, first of all, think about whether we can somehow do what we already asked people to do, whether we can work on education. We noted in the previous item that the city really cares about its people, and when they have rent financial issues, the city cares. But you go anywhere near any of our schools at school drop-off, and it's pretty clear our residents don't care about each other. They run stop signs, they hit crossing guards. It's the most dangerous place in the city of Albany is anywhere near a school drop-off. That doesn't need any engineering solutions. That needs education and enforcement and a change of mindset. And yes, maybe engineering solutions can replace those things, but that seems like an expensive way to get those things accomplished. So anyway, I love all this. I hope that we're able to make our city what we hope it will be, but I hope we start sometimes with the cheaper and easier options before we go, get rid of parking and move all our streets. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I can certainly respond to that if needed. I guess I just wanted to note the purview of the active transportation plan that we're under contract to do largely focuses on the engineering side, the physical side. There will be a policy section in the document, like Justin noted. It's in draft form now, and we're collecting input like this so we can reflect some of these goals in the policies as well. So the policies will say something like strict enforcement is crucial to making these goals work. In terms of actually doing the enforcement and doing the education, that's outside the purview of our specific contract, but we do definitely recommend that those are kind of three legs to the stool as part of the solution.
Thank you. We'll go to public comments online.
Hi, my name is Brian Martin. If someone could put up the slide on the pedestrian network, that would be great. It's figure 3. If not, that's okay. I'll be talking about it in just a moment. I did want to say I am looking forward to the work that's going to be done based on these documents and the details that will be worked out, and having all the options laid out is great to see, things like that. I live in the northwest corner of the city and at the base of Albany Hill, on Adams Street, near the bowling alley. And I think we're all looking forward to what the map says is alignment pending future study at the northern end of Adams Street. I personally am hoping for a bridge that goes across the creek there at Adams Street and makes that connection so that we can see the true potential of this alternative to San Pablo Avenue on the western side of San Pablo Avenue. And thanks for showing the pedestrian walking network in the northwest corner, the upper left-hand corner of the map, really the quarter of it. There's a few things that some just don't make sense, and then other things. First of all, I do appreciate, as I pointed out at a Transportation Commission meeting, I do appreciate hearing that it's on the city's radar, it's on the consultant's radar, that there are actual gaps in our infrastructure for pedestrians, that there are sidewalks that are completely missing, and on the hill, Albany Hill, and on curb cuts that are completely missing. And so that's a whole thing that I appreciate the Transportation Commission put that in the focus on Albany Hill for these kind of things in there. If you look at that, so there's a couple things that I think make no sense, but if you can clarify, for example, there's a red dot on Pierce Street that goes east up the west side of Albany Hill. It's the highest dot, and that's private land to the right of that. So I don't think the city can be planning what happens there. Another thing is that where the cursor is right now, I think some of that gray dashed area might be private land as well for paths. And also to the left of where the cursor is, Garfield has some missing patches, and it needs some attention even if it's not a high network one. And then lastly, on Castro, there's a dashed line to the left, to the west, where Madison and Castro are. There's just houses there. The city doesn't have a right-of-way there. There's no space to put a stairs or anything to connect Madison and the next street up and Jackson, so that should be removed.
Thank you for your comment.
Ian, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. Ian McLeod here on the Planning and Zoning Commission, speaking on my own behalf. It's great that this is moving forward. I really would like to advocate for protected bike lanes on all the major streets and connecting all schools. The irony of the EEE is enforcement is non-existent. Education is having no effect whatsoever. So you are left with engineering. I kind of have to disagree with one of the previous speakers. I think engineering is the way to deal with it. And that it just makes the case, because people are ignoring traffic laws, et cetera, parking everywhere, parking in bike lanes, parking, at intersections, running stop signs, running stoplights, that you really do need protected bike lanes that are physically separated, that protect the riders, give everybody knowledge of where they're supposed to be, drivers, cyclists, pedestrians. It's much safer for everybody. So I think it's kind of ironic that we are left with engineering. And, when you have those examples of Jackson and Brighton, I think that's very instructive because you have to think about who are the primary users of those streets, who would be the primary users. And those are school kids and parents. Now, who should have the most protection? It should be those kind of riders. Why don't we make Albany the most family-friendly biking city possible? Parents and kids will love it. You see that there's more demand coming with all the cargo bikes, all the Barrow bikes, kids in front, kids in the back. Families would love this. You would make the city much safer, less polluted, quieter. I mean, it's a win-win-win everywhere. So I would really argue that we should be putting in the most robust network possible, protected bike lanes, and that absolutely includes San Pablo Avenue, which will be a regional cycling facility between Richmond, El Cerrito, Berkeley, all the way to Oakland. And we should work with ACTC on that and Bike East Bay. And the other issue is that we're having more housing coming. We need to provide alternates to car use for our new residents that are coming. And that's the essence of transit-oriented development, which I think doesn't get enough talk in this whole thing. The context here is climate change and more residents. So we really need to accommodate a low-impact, non-carbon polluting form of transportation. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Oh, apologies. There's a mosquito that I've so endearly just nicknamed Trump.
So the mosquito came over there. bring
Am I back then? Do I eat the mosquito? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So thanks to the staff and the consultants for this. As the materials do state, goal 1 of the city's climate action plan is to decrease passenger motor vehicle miles traveled. So we have to really create a true network, not little blocks here and there of safe bike routes, including safe crossings, so people of all ages and abilities can leave their cars at home and get where they're going safely and comfortably. There are a lot of important specifics that you guys discuss in this: bike lanes, sidewalks, slowing motor vehicle speeding, stop sign signal enforcement, traffic safety in school zones, priority right-of-way. I'm going to talk about the Albany's major active transportation route, northwest transportation route, which is the Olona Greenway. That was configured more than 10 years ago, and since then, the number of people cycling has grown tremendously, and the number of families and individuals riding e-bikes and cargo bikes has grown exponentially. So the configuration as it is now is more crowded. All users are constricted, which isn't comfortable or safe for anybody. So really we need to widen the entire paved path for all users and widen the dirt path and separate it from the paved portion, as is done on the Gene Sweeney Trail in Alameda. I don't know if you've been there, but if you haven't, go there. It's the Cross Alameda Trail through Gene Sweeney Park. It's more comfortable and safe for all because you have a two-way bike lane, and then you have a separated pedestrian and running path. And that's a lot safer, comfortable for everybody. That's the way. It's a great model. It's really the way to safe for seniors and families who are riding in Albany. The other thing about Key Route, it does connect to Ashbury and El Cerrito, which has a bike lane. So it's really an important fast cycling connection to El Cerrito North. When you're riding from El Cerrito, you're on a comfortable bike lane, and then bam, you hit the Albany border and the bike lane disappears. So I'm really looking forward to having a true, complete walking and rolling network that truly accommodates all ages and abilities. Thank you, and I hope you get rid of the mosquito. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm a resident of Albany. I'm also a member of the Transportation Commission, but I am just speaking for myself. Thank you for the presentation, and I want to thank addressing San Pablo Avenue and acknowledging that it was recommended to be a high comfort network. I just wanted to provide some additional context and support for the high comfort network to echo two of the public comment about San Pablo Avenue. North end of San Pablo was previously included in the Complete Streets Plan, and other intersections and southern segments along San Pablo are included as high comfort networks in this draft plan. So the network as shown without the complete high comfort network is incomplete and disjointed. So I would urge to please consider including San Pablo Avenue as a high comfort network to connect our city with our neighboring communities, as has been noted. Additionally, as noted, future housing and business developments on San Pablo will see an increase in residents and visitors needing safe, active transportation options. Please consider including San Pablo Avenue as a high comfort network to reflect the forward thinking and strong goals that a plan like this active transportation plan needs to support the rest of our city's climate and housing goals. And I also wanted to address a comment about Key Route, where some car behavior like speeding and running stop signs on Key Route was referenced. To mention that ignoring a high comfort network, especially one that provides access to a school, due to existing illegal and reckless car behaviors, such as running stop signs and speeding, enables this unsafe behavior by accepting the status quo. So I really hope that we don't use the excuse of existing unsafe car behavior as a reason to not prioritize something as a high comfort network, especially one that connects important destinations like schools. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. This is Lucinda Young. I want to thank staff for this excellent report. I really learned a lot. And I'm just going to be brief. I want to echo the comments of Ian McLeod and Amy Smallins and Ellen Heil that just went, that we need a walking and rolling network that addresses our climate emergency. And regarding the previous speaker's comment that in addition to engineering, we need enforcement and education, I completely agree. However, we definitely need more enforcement. As far as education, you know, people know they're supposed to stop at stop signs. They don't. Education is not the problem. The problem is a deeper social problem in that people are just not caring. And I don't think that is something that this council can really address. What we can address is engineering and enforcement, and I know the focus here is engineering. So I really think that we need to work on that. Thank you, and I look forward to Albany becoming a safer and walking and rolling friendly city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, that concludes our public comment portion. Oh, he got little Trump. Good job. That just comes with the territory of serving on the mosquito abatement district.
You got it, Mayor.
Does he bring them with him?
Yeah, did you bring that with you? And that aided the Jeptide?
Show and tell.
Okay.
Bringing the attention back on the agenda item on hand, I do want to just acknowledge a couple of the comments that came through during public comment. Something I learned while I was studying civil engineering as an undergraduate, and what probably drove me out of it as a career and tackling more pressing issues, is that you can't engineer yourself out of everything. Engineering can certainly help provide significant puzzle pieces to the problem, but it doesn't always account for the social dynamics of human behavior. And that certainly drove me towards where I'm at now in environmental science, policy, and management at Berkeley. So I do want to acknowledge that, and I want to acknowledge that that concept was near and dear to me, and a lot of what sparked me to consider running for council some years ago, because the first week I moved into Albany, some individual who I probably have choice words for to this day completely drove on the sidewalk in Portland between Spokane and San Gabriel, and that really upset me. Thankfully I caught that on dash cam and was able to report it. But the point being that there was a clear disregard for human life, and no amount of engineering is going to prevent or stop someone from being that reckless and careless. A lot of it is, awareness and outreach, with the ATP does work on addressing, is, communicating with our community members, but that only goes so far. There is a lot more that can be done. I know there's another group out here in Albany having a campaign that says Albany is a great place to stop, but there's definitely things that maybe we as a council separately could entertain and take on. Not part of this conversation per se, but definitely does address some of those key points that we should be looking at in terms of looking at not just enforcement of policy, but finding ways to mitigating those risks and just making people more socially aware of their actions and their behavior. because it's so easy to brush it off and say, oh, well, that's probably someone who doesn't live here in that city. Someone who's driving on a sidewalk and going up San Gabriel probably more than likely lives in the city if they know where that takes them and that they could get away with doing something like that. I also want to acknowledge that, yes, we are in a climate crisis. We're in a climate emergency. Anything that we can do to reduce our carbon footprint collectively as a city is something that we ought to commit to, because that's what we're tied to. That's what we're bound by. It shouldn't be simply because we're bound by it, but because we have a social responsibility. So I just also want to acknowledge that, several of our public comments definitely do support where we're at so far with our active transportation plan. And I think that speaks greatly to the collaboration between consultants and our city staff in making sure that we are meeting our goals as a city. I was also, and I just want to acknowledge that I think goes in tandem with a comment that was made around prioritizing buffered and protected bike lanes around school zones. I think for many of us, that's probably a no-brainer, hopefully, that's something we should be advocating for, especially as we're seeing kids just by the dozens rush out of Albany Middle specifically. It's just, I think it's really cool when I see the kids just storming out on their bikes and going down the Greenway. It's a really beautiful thing to observe. Like, so many young people are using other methods of transportation, but we owe it to them to also find ways to protect them. And it doesn't mean that we're going to engineer a way into a solution to protect them, but if we have the know-how and the ability to do so to at least meet one aspect of the problem, to keep our young people safe, then so be it. We should do it. If that falls within the purview of our active transportation plan and guidance to city staff. The conversation about traffic enforcement, again, I feel like that is something for a different conversation. So I don't want anyone to feel like I'm trivializing or dismissing those concerns, but because it's not an agendized item, we can't go too deep into that rabbit hole. But if Councilmember Jordan is walking alone by himself, there's certainly a way for community members to tap into him. And I'll leave it at that in terms of, what does enforcement, what does safety look like? Because we do need to make sure we're focused on the active transportation plan here, and receiving the updates and providing any feedback as necessary. That said, I'll look to council for any further discussion on this item. To my knowledge, there's no explicit action that's required on this, correct? But yeah, if anyone else has additional.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll follow up a little bit on the conversation about enforcement versus engineering. Probably one of my favorite examples of how engineering can really solve a lot of key issues is you go to the Gilman interchange today at I-80. It is a worlds better experience for any user than it was before that was built. And I avoided that on foot. I avoided that by bike. I avoided that by car because it was chaos. And in some ways, the chaos actually meant that it was safe because everyone was freaking out. But I kind of like where we are today, where it's not really chaos and it's safe. And so I do think there are times where engineering is needed. And I will, engineering can be anything from speed bumps, which I think is probably the lowest hanging fruit. And oftentimes, I like to think of it as a placeholder and see if people start behaving. And if not, then you have to go to more structured things potentially. And one of the things that I appreciate is I think our city is at a place now where we're looking into those options. I think when I was on traffic and safety, it was pretty hard to even get a speed bump in this city. So I think a lot of that's changed. In terms of the education and the engineering, though, I live right across from Rynn Elementary School. Like most of the elementary schools, it's chaos. It's not quite the level of the middle school. but it's chaos. But I noted that this year there was an effort both by the police department, which they do pretty much every year at all of our schools. The first few days of school, they're out there reminding all the parents what are they supposed to be doing and what not supposed to be doing. And so I think that's part of the enforcement education. But the Marin Elementary School actually went ahead and put in signs that said this is a student loading zone, right? 3-minute parking. So it was much more in your face for parents to remember what the rules are, as opposed to it just being some white paint along the sidewalk. And particularly on Curtis, there were volunteers over the years who would help remind parents or help children cross the street. But that is completely dependent. That's kind of like another version of enforcement. It only works when you actually have people who can spend the time and either volunteer or pay them to be there. And so I think one of the things I appreciate is the engineering side of this. One of the things that I'll note that, it's not agendized, but it is a street and it's being labeled as a high priority pedestrian network. It's like there are many streets in Albany that are being listed as high priority pedestrian networks. And there are a lot of streets in Albany, both near me where I live and both in the kind of the western part of the city, where people drive up and park on the curb, right? Half their car is off the street. Not particularly something that I would say is conducive to a high priority pedestrian network. So I'll just raise that as something. I think key route, I think the thing that, I mentioned key route that there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I think that's in its current design, engineering design. I mean, it is designed to park cars and have cars move quickly. It's not designed for bicyclists. It's relatively good for pedestrians. But you can see that in El Cerrito, they're already doing things to make it more approachable for bicyclists. It's still going to be a little bit higher street speed-wise. I think it's still not going to be necessarily a roadway that, unless we get protected bike lanes, it's not going to necessarily be all ages and all abilities. But I think that's the other thing I keep thinking about is, Key Route is a connector, and as the further you go down Key Route, the further it goes away from the Ohlone Greenway, the more it kind of spreads out into not so much Albany, but into El Cerrito. I mentioned Carmel earlier, and I didn't say this in the question part, but I raised it because one of the things that's great about Carmel and El Cerrito is they have little mini traffic circles, right, all along that road, and it is engineering traffic calming. If I had one regret from the active transportation plan, it was requesting that they be pulled from Albany. Because in my mind, I was like, this is a 5-year plan, we'll build it out, we'll review it in 5 years, and then we'll be ready to do it.
Boy, were you wrong?
Yeah, I called that one wrong. So, I see in El Cerrito how it's worked, because these are relatively new in the last decade. So that's another reason why I brought up Carmel, is that it is a calmer street, and there has been investment along that street at intersections to make it calmer. So I do want to emphasize that I am in favor of making Key Route as accessible to all ages and abilities, but I also know that that's maybe not at the level of a San Pablo and Solano conversation, but it is, there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that roadway.
Really quick before I let other council members speak, I just also want to note that there was a comment made around private lanes. I don't want us to get into the nitty gritty of that, but I'll just, if I can just ask just to double check on that and maybe circle back with an email to myself so I can follow up with that public comment. Appreciate that. Sorry, Councilmember Hanson Romero.
I think you were commenting on the comment that we got about the bike lane going through the green strip on Key Route Meridian, which I don't believe was ever discussed or planned as being anything. So, but, so I lived on the 1000 block of Key Route, and one thing that I want to mention about the Key Route portion, or that portion, and you're correct in the fact that from, I'm trying to think in my head. So from Solano to Berkeley on Key Route, driveways are typically not long enough to fit a car. That's why they're completely unusable driveways in a lot of those spots. So that's why you've got a lot of parking and a lot of cars on that portion of Key Route. When I lived on the 1000 block, my son would bike to Albany High on that, and I would stand out in fear of God that he was going to make it across Marin. I was just like watching until he got across. Finally, I was like, okay, but so that's why I don't think, especially that section of Key Route, would be good for that portion of things. But also, in your remarks about parking on this side or on the sidewalk, I am one of those cars who lives on Pierce, and I park partially up on the curb on the sidewalk, which is actually where I think the tree would go. It's not really the actual
And I'm not sure you want to say this on record.
part of sidewalk. But now, because the buses that come by and the street is so narrow, you have no other choice. Yeah. So, yeah.
I just need a wooden Powerball. We'll solve all these problems.
Right? I know. Okay.
Vice Mayor McQuaid.
Oh, thank you. I think all three, engineering, enforcement, education, I think they're all part of the puzzle. And, we can't have one of them. We have to have them all. And I think we can create a culture of safety for our whole community, and it comes through the education, but also has to come from enforcement of people thinking, oh, yeah, I better pay attention because something, I could get stopped and not necessarily need to get a ticket, but just there's the education piece. So we need them all. We need all three. And the other thing is we all need to think about, it's not those people that are running stop signs, it's us. I mean, I will say I've run a stop sign in my life, and I'm sure everybody up here has. I'm sure everybody in the community has. So we need to be careful we're not pointing it, it's those guys. It's everybody. And as far as Key Route, that needs a lot of really thoughtful discussion, and I don't think we're going to do that tonight, but just sort of as let's not jump in anything too quickly over there.
Yeah, I agree, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Key Route is part of the next phase of conversation.
So currently what's shown on the network is north of Solano, Key Route is being proposed, designated as a all ages and abilities. So it would then go to, as we showed in an example, these are the ways to try to meet that. So there will be some development of projects coming in this next phase, something like Key Route that has a lot of different considerations. Probably will be ongoing planning effort that would need to come after that before we would settle on a particular design solution. So it would be a process.
Okay, thank you. And then just want to acknowledge Vice Mayor McQuaid's acknowledgement of running stop signs. I knew you were a gangster.
I was the one driving on the side.
I was like, when Councilmember Hans Romero talked about parking, I was like, Vice Mayor McQuaid's gonna come in hot with something. Do we have any additional comments? Go for it.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess a comment on the leading pedestrian interval. What I have heard where those don't work very well is for motorists who are turning onto an arterial from a signalized side street. And so they're at a red, and they're looking upstream in the motorists, and so they don't even notice that there's an LPI or anything going on, and they don't even notice, that it's turned green. They just, as soon as they see a gap, they go. So it's definitely a hazard that's been repeated over and over. In terms of four-way stop, controlled intersections, I'm sure you'll consider speed tables as one engineering approach to get people to slow down instead of just roll straight through. Moving to the sidewalk user network, I support sending Carmel. I think that's a good idea. I had in mind the need for some sidewalk priority intersection between Santa Fe and, I'm going to say, Masonic for reasons I'll get to. Heard of people, having no place that they feel safe crossing there. Now, part of that is the need to rebuild Solano. I was thinking Ramona because it's more midway in between, but Carmel makes some sense because it's actually a route. For both the networks, in terms of the Cordnesis Creek crossing, I don't know if it came up in the TAC, but I'm not supportive of showing an arrow across Cordnesis Creek at 9th Street because that would require a new bridge. We already have a crossing of Cordnesis Creek, one block to the east and one block to the west, so I don't think we need to impact the creek more for that. And it's not a through route on the north side anyway. It just dead ends into the Little League fields. Back to sidewalk user priority intersections. I would include the intersection of Thousand Oaks and Key Route. I don't know how many of the high school students, maybe all of them walk through that intersection to get to Cougar Field and back, going to classes and whatnot. Along Portland, I would recommend leading Ramona and adding Carmel. I think that fits with the direction that people talked about here. Carmel has a four-way stop already, so as well as at Washington. I suggest not including Key Route at Solano because it's not a through route across Solano. So I would really want to instead, those people that are crossing Solano, I want to encourage them to go to the signal and then try to stay on Key Route there. Because I had an experience in Marin where somebody, it turned out I knew, riding a bike at night in the rain, rode Key Route because he said that way he didn't have to stop at the signal. And he caused a rear end collision in which I was involved in because he rode right across the street in front of traffic. And so I really don't want to encourage people to be using Key Route as a through route for any purpose.
I don't recommend trying to drive north on Key Route across Solano either.
Yeah. It's just.
I'd have lost a vehicle doing that.
You what?
I might have totaled a vehicle doing that.
Wow. All sorts of stories are coming out tonight.
Well, Jenna's going to share off.
We're all going to jail.
I'd suggest adding Pierce at Buchanan because it's a high motorist volume intersection as a pedestrian intersection. As far as the path that's proposed in alignment with Clay Street between Addison and Jackson, I'm responsible for that, so blame me. It came about because I noticed in the parcel maps that the city actually does own property along that alignment. I don't know if it's a sewer easement or, well, it's not an easement because there's actually no private property there. Once you know that, if you go out there and look at it, you can see there's a gap between the houses. I would suggest adding, I'm going to call it a trail that connects from that upper end of that stairway at Jackson to Taft, and I'm calling it a trail so that to put in mind having it not go straight uphill but across the hill because that'll lower the cost of construction. Some of it will have to be stairs, but the idea with that is that if and when I hope, the residences get built on the 2-acre Albany Bowl site, there's going to be, I don't know, another 400 residents there. So if the MDL to have that facility to go right up to Albany Hill, I think would be really, really useful for them, obviously, as well as for other residents. For both networks, there's a high comfort stub from Buchanan along the connection to East Shore Highway, but then it ends short of any destination that people who are pursuing active transportation for the most part would want to reach. So I'd suggest extending both of those to the driveway of Target, because right now it just stops across the street from the Toyota mechanics and used car dealership. For the cycling network, I recommend removing Spokane, at least south of Brighton. So the Albany Middle School now is, as of some years ago, started opening the west gate again during arrival time and leaving time, and so students are able to bike and walk on the Greenway via that west gate. And Spokane doesn't have a stop sign at Portland, and so one would potentially have to be put in, but then there's a stop sign on Key Route one way and a stop sign on Masonic the other way, and it doesn't really make sense to have it, on yet another route in between between Key Route and the Greenway there.
I mean, a challenge there, Preston, is that staff could explore other options beyond a stop sign, whether it's a mini traffic circle. There are other ways to control traffic that wouldn't necessarily necessitate a stop sign. Because I agree, the proximity of all those stop signs would be potentially aggravating for drivers. And when drivers get aggravated, they sometimes don't always do things they should be doing.
Well, I understood that you couldn't have two within a certain few feet of each other, because we have that problem on Pearson and Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't support Spokane, period, because it's just so close to Key Route and to the Greenway, and I think the Greenway is the safer facility by far anyway. It wasn't, Spokane came in part because at some point the school district decided they were going to keep that west gate closed, and so students who were riding to school, if they took the Greenway, they were going to have to ride up Brighton and go around the east side, but they don't have to do that anymore. And I think if we emphasize that, we can try to keep the school district on board with opening and closing that west gate at the appropriate times.
Yeah, I support that too, definitely. Spokane's too narrow anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, it is also, it's a kind of a free parking zone for people who are picking up middle school students. Motorists are picking up middle school students, so it's not a place that I would want to send students through.
It's just that if I'm reading this right, what you're asking us really to do is remove what was at one point identified in the previous plan.
Yes, that is what I'm asking.
Yep. All good.
For Portland, I recommend not including it in the rolling network west of Masonic. A lot of money put into making the crossing at Washington high comfort. A new traffic signal and then coordinating those two signals together. That's, I don't know what a traffic signal goes for now, but a lot of money. And I would prefer to focus people on traveling Washington to cross San Pablo. And Portland isn't in the high comfort network anyway. So yeah, I would recommend removing that to try to get people who are on west of San Pablo to focus on taking Washington or Brighton. Talbot, again, want to emphasize, I live on Talbot. So just for disclosure, both Marin and Ocean View have high comfort routes north-south that extend all the way across the city. So Curtis for Marin and then Jackson Adams for Ocean View. So I don't know why Cornell wouldn't have the same thing. And at the north end, pursuant to last active transportation plan and the striping design that came out of it, it hasn't ever been implemented. It was to have a contraflow cycling lane north of Brighton so that people could bike straight into the plaza. And so it would make that connection to the plaza as well. I am almost there. Thank you for bearing with me. Yeah, I think that's all of it. Thank you for your work. I've had some input, and I appreciate your paying attention to it. And one of the things I believe I noted was that you adjusted the NACTA rubric so that facilities of the type like a bicycle boulevard had a 20 mile per hour max motorist rather than 25. I think the NACTA guidance is 25, which is kind of an unfortunate degradation from the Dutch origination of that, which had a 30 kilometer per hour limit, which is 18 miles per hour. So I appreciate it coming down to 20 because on top of where I live, which again is along a street to school, I don't see any kids riding in the street because 25 miles per hour is not something that people, their parents and or they are going to put up with riding on. So thanks for making that adjustment.
Since we're in discussion, I would be in favor of keeping Masonic in the study so that we can understand what level of effort might happen. Portland west of Masonic. Again, thinking back to 2013 when I pulled things out of the report and I'm like, it can be a low priority thing, right? We can always change the priority later or we can ask them to remove it later. But just in terms of having that network, I understand the crossing of Solano, but I do think at least having them study what happens between what is Canes. Just because if you're going on Canes and you want to get over to Memorial Park or the high school, Portland is going to be the most direct route. If you're a young family and you want the all ages abilities, you're going to take Washington. Washington's wider. We're going to have way more options of what we can do on Washington to provide, high level of comfort than we would on Portland. But I would ask that we not preemptively remove at least that segment. I understand where you came on other segments, but I would ask that we not remove that one.
It was a
okay.
It's up to staff and the consultants to look at. Yeah.
And Councilmember Hanson Romero.
Yeah, just one other thing. You were talking about speeds, or we've been talking about speeds. Well, now we know that the e-bikes are going way, way faster than, a lot of cars I'm seeing even. I'll see them flying down the Greenway. And so when we talk about speeds, I just want to make sure that we're talking about both, car speeds and bike speeds, because that is an issue. I've seen some pedestrians almost get hit. And it's very scary, especially when they're elderly. So,
Well, and the combination of the speed and the fact that, just generally speaking, e-bikes are much heavier. I mean, I think my bike, without all the other things I added to it, was 70 pounds. I'm guessing my bike is closer to 85 with all the random things I've thrown on my bike. So you add that plus the speed, and that's dangerous. I think there's also, not that this necessarily has to do with the actual transportation plan, but I think there's a need for, much like mopeds, there is in most states, 50 cc's or less, essentially you can have a regular license and drive it. I actually don't know if that applies in California. I knew that was in Florida because I thought about a 50 cc motorcycle. And anything above that is a motorcycle, and you need a motorcycle license. I think the state needs to, at this point, start to step in and say, at a certain speed or a certain motor size, power, you are considered a moped. Like, you're considered a motorcycle, and as such, you need a license, and you should not be on these multi-use trails. But until the state does that, it's really not in our control. But we could talk to some state legislators.
All right. Well,
Sorry.
it's okay. Don't worry.
Sorry, Mala.
I think we've provided enough input for discussion for staff. I'll just end it off with saying that I do appreciate thoroughly where we've gotten thus far. And I do appreciate the concept of safe streets. Earlier, my partner had let me know, like, my chief of staff was in the clear view over by Jackson and Buchanan, right around the corner from here. But because everything's so clear and visible, he was waving at the police. Certainly not something I was doing at that age, waving with all fingers, even at the 3-year-old. I know, yeah, we're all letting it out today. But I say that to say that providing safe, visible spaces for pedestrians and cyclists alike, and for motorists, it allows for those interactions. It allows for people, these engineers designed to also have some sense of social accountability. And he got a little way back with the lights. So I just want to say, a personal thank you to staff for, facilitating moments like that in our community, for our children to be able to do that, and for my daughter to be able to walk safely sometimes down Marin. And trust, I'll definitely probably have my chief of staff reviewing tonight's video, snitching on everyone on the dais tonight for what we have confessed to. With that said, I think we're at a good point to close out this item. Again, thank you, staff. Thank you to our consultant. We really appreciate it. And with that said, I'll go ahead and move on to...
Could I make a motion? Since it's 10:25, could I move, we extend until 10:45?
Yes, City Clerk, can we have a vote, please?
Second.
Yeah, second vote. There we go.
Oh, they're all leaving. Oh.
Councilmember Hanson Romero.
only if you get rid of this mosquito. Yes.
Councilmember Jordan.
Yes.
Councilmember Mickey,
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid,
Yes.
Mayor Lopez.
Yep. All right, moving on to item number 12, subcommittee report. We will start with Councilmember Mickey.
So I owe the council a written report from my Cal Cities conference. I think one of the highlights that I'll just highlight was there is an effort to form a small cities group, cities under 35,000. I think the theme of it, "We are small, but we are mighty," was kind of the theme, and really having smaller cities kind of share ideas, share experiences, knowing that the solutions that are generally applicable at the larger cities are cost prohibitive or staff time intensive beyond what most small cities can. I attended the pancake breakfast. I believe that's it for my report out.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor McQuaid.
Thank you. My report from the league conference will be attached to the next agenda. I attended the pancake breakfast, and then I want to thank everybody who came to the open house, especially those people that came in and visited with the mayor and myself. We had 2 housing authority meetings, one a regular commission meeting, and then one for the budget and negotiation committee. And I also attended the United Against Hate event in the library yesterday. The kids were making little buttons. And I was at the protest on Saturday.
And there was something else.
I guess we'll pass it to Councilmember Hanson Romero for that segue.
Vice Mayor McQuaid and I were also at the Albany Education Foundation Awards at Marin School, which she's been working on for many years, which I always appreciate seeing everybody there and all of our past educators. And it was a wonderful event, so thank you for that. And also the pancake breakfast, and we really liked having the foam batons and stuff in here. I think we need to have those in here all the time. It was really fun.
Yeah, and I'll say that those were donated to the city by the Albany Police Activities League several years ago, and they travel around the city. Most of them stay in the city, walk down the street.
Thank you. And then Councilmember Jordan.
I could make the mosquito quest even more entertaining to watch as we swat each other over the head trying to get the mosquito. Talk about chaos. I was ineffective. So the Policy, Planning, and Legislative Committee of the Alameda County Transportation Commission met, and it's maybe the highest of interest item, not necessarily applicable to Albany, but with the mention of Gilman, relevant to the rest of the county, recommended to the commission that it approve release of requests for proposals for a countywide ramp intersection safety study. So there's a lot of freeway interchanges throughout the county that are also very hazardous. So, and the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District didn't meet this month.
We see.
All right, thank you very much. On my end, I had also attended the pancake breakfast and was out here dealing with Vice Mayor McQuaid as we were interacting with community members, at least to the extent possible for me, while my chief of staff kept me busy. And yes, there were plenty of activities and tools for the young people to use to pass the time by. I'm definitely not opposed to allowing those items to be here for members of the public to utilize during public comment towards us. I'll be less brutal than some of the words we get. Additionally, we finally do have a meeting on the books again for the Giltrack Farm in December. As well, we have a meeting on the books, but nothing set in stone in terms of what is to be discussed. So hopefully, considerable report back item, since it's been over a year since we've been able to make that happen. A lot of that just because there have been things going on that UC Berkeley in my home department with trying to find someone to fill a role that's been more or less a big void. Additionally, because it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen later this week, and I think it is important, worth acknowledging. This Friday, I do intend to meet with our Congressmember Latifah Simon, alongside several other mayors within her jurisdiction, to go over some of the impacts regarding the government shutdown, what the outlook may look like for us within her jurisdiction. So hopefully considerable amount to report back on there as well, but I just want to put that on the front end for folks to be aware that that is in the works. I don't want community members to think that we on council are not disregarding what's going on at the federal level, and I do know Vice Mayor McQuaid did make mention of that, and I think it's absolutely important that we remain cognizant and mindful of the reality of the situation we're in right now. Beyond that, just trying to catch up on a long sleep. I know that's not official mayoral duties, but October has been oddly much more busier than I had anticipated, with a lot of moving parts. So just hoping that we're able to see brighter days in December, even though winter's coming. Nothing on my list of things going on. I know I'd mentioned it last time, we had to cancel our AVA board meeting for October due to the activity going on in Long Beach. We will have our next board meeting tomorrow. We also had our marketing, regulatory, legislative meeting yesterday, not yesterday, last Friday. Thankfully, a good chunk of what we as a board have been advocating for and what AVA Energy has been advocating for was able to make its way towards signature to the governor's office. So we're hopeful for things to keep moving in the right direction for AVA, but also for our county. That said, closes out our subcommittee reports. Not seeing any comments from the public. I'll move on to item number 13. Any future agenda item that council members want to propose? I will just have two quick ones worth noting, because I do see this as, I do want to acknowledge that the conversation that is of interest to the public and to us on council, agendizing something around the conversation of awareness around traffic calming and enforcement and what that may look like, because I do feel like that does require a bit more of an intimate discussion, especially with our public safety officials. Additionally, it was right on the tip of my tongue. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't. I'll circle back to it at a later time. But aside from that, I'm not seeing any members of the public with future agenda items. I'll move on to item number 14. All future meetings can be found on our website, albanyca.gov. And with that said, we will join this meeting. Thank you very much.